So the first time he ever went to Ireland was on arguably the most renowned event in Ireland, the Classic, 400 pegger, and you won it.
Yes.
With a record weight, £331.
Still stands, yes.
To this day.
Yeah.
That's still the record now. That is mental.
The Fishing Gurus Podcast.
I've got a interesting one for you. I was filming yesterday and I managed to catch 2 fish on 1 hook. Have you ever done that? You ever done it?
Twice.
Never. Go on.
2 gudgeon. When I'm fishing bloodworm, twice it happened.
Ah.
How can you catch 2 fish on 1 little hook?
2 gudgeon.
Twice I did it.
What, so hooks through the lip and both
of them through the lip.
What about you, Rod? You ever done it?
Not a chance, no, but different league, me, I'm down there, you know what I mean? Expect it off you lads.
Don't you lot on this side of hills? Don't you
double looking?
Yeah, double looking's like a thing, innit?
Yes.
What's that all about? Because I've never ever seen a rig with 2 hooks.
Because we're not good enough, catch quick enough with 1 we used to. That's it.
No, it's just a done thing here in the northwest on the Weaver and the canals. We always use 2 hooks.
Do you do it still now then, Kevin?
Yes, when I'm fishing the tip. Because then you're fishing for small fish, so it don't matter. But then you can catch 2 skimmers. One on either hook, one on top hook. Sometimes you catch more on a top hook than a bottom hook.
It's mad, honestly, for someone who's...
Which obviously, the top hook is nearer to the feeder.
Yeah.
So that's... but then sometimes you can't always catch near the feeder. You've got to use a longer tail. So then that's where the second hook comes in.
Have you ever caught 2 big fish? Like
yes.
2 bream?
2 bream.
Never.
Caught 2 bream when I was behind him once in Ireland.
On Trory.
25, remember?
What, with 2 hooks on?
2 4-pound bream.
Lost pair of them.
Never! Go on, what happened?
Oh, he got it a bit wrong, didn't he? Missed one, the other one went the other way, snapped off, and fired a load of F's into me, and that was that.
No, I've caught hybrid on a bream as well.
Sure, I bet it's a 8 carry on
But
netting
then,
them.
on Loch Ken, there's a lot of 2 skimmers caught together.
Which one do you net first, topper or bottomer?
No, you've got to net the bottom one first.
That's bizarre.
If you net the top one, you're in big trouble.
I'll have to have a go yet. You could even go out and film a vlog and you 2 could teach me how to use 2 hooks. That'd be a good one, that would.
Easy.
Thank you for coming on the show, gents. And honestly, it gives me great pleasure. It's an honour to sit down with both of you. And I honestly never thought I'd be doing a podcast with Kevin Ashurst. So welcome to the Fishing Gurus podcast, sir. Have you done one before, Kevin?
No.
Nice. Well, it's an honour to have you on. It really is. Let's start from the beginning. Obviously, we've had a chat before and we've done a nice bit of planning. The best planning that we've ever had on the podcast, I've got to be honest. I wish every guest would do that for me. But tell us a little bit about where it started for you, fishing. What are your earliest memories of fishing, Kevin?
Well, the earliest I can ever remember, I used to go fishing with my dad, obviously. My dad was a miner, and he had a bad accident in the mines, and so he started fishing. And he used to take me on a bike or on the crossbar, and I can never forget this, even though all them years ago, I'd probably be about 4-year-old.
Wow.
And he said, we'll stop and get some worms from this midden. And he went across this field to this farm where the, midden was. And then there was a bit of a track, so he's not riding, he's walking with the bike, I'm on the crossbar. And I saw the tyre. Obviously, in them days, nobody had nothing. They were hard times then. And I could see there were an hole inside of the tyre, but there was some string wrapped round it. And then I saw the string flipped off, because it obviously worn. Then next thing, there's a balloon comes outside of the tyre. So I said to my dad, Dad, there's an egg there. He says, where? I said, there. Then next thing, bang. There were no fishing done that day. And then, well, after that, there were one particular day I were in the house and knock on the door. I'd probably be about 7, 8. And, is your mum in? I said, no, it was the rent man, because Friday was the wage day. They used to come round and collect the rent on Friday. And, is your dad in? I said, yeah. My dad were in the kitchen. I said, rent man's here, Dad. He says, tell him I'm not in. I said, I've told him you're in. So he goes, and this fella says, nice day, Mr. Ashurst. He said, aye, for some. He said, but not for you. Come next week, I'll give you double. So he went, and he was fishing this match, Northern Handlers match. And when my mum come in, they went mad because he'd not paid the rent. Anyway, he went, fished the match, and his tattle must have been crap tattle. Only the secretary from the Fir Tree Handling Club, he said, well, look, Benny, you borrow my tattle. Anyway, he went, Northern Handlers match, and won it. So when he come back, everything were all rosy, and my mum had the rollers in, and they were off to the pub that night. So everything worked out well.
He managed to pay his rent.
Well, them days, everybody missed rent.
That's just how it were. Amazing. Obviously, your dad, you're talking about Benny Ashurst.
Yes.
I always remember, even my granddad used to talk about yourself, but he always used to talk about Benny. And I'm sure he told me, I remember being sat in his shed at Caravan, turning some casters. And I can remember him saying to me, dead specific, he says, this is Benny Ashurst were one of the first anglers to use casters properly, and him and Kevin used to win a load of matches. Is that true? Is that a thing that you and Benny?
They started, and I think it just happened by chance. You know, the maggots would be turning, and he put one on one day and caught on it, decent fishing. Then this was before me, really. I were only in my early teens. And, all the Lee handlers soon cottoned on to it, and the Lee handlers used to win most of the matches. And that's how it all started. And there were just several different handlers coming up and winning. And Lee were a centre affiliated to Northern Handlers. Also, there were others, Wigan, Bolton, Preston, and they used to fish these matches, and Wigan in particular, Northern Handlers of Wigan, affiliated to Northern Handlers. Tommy Blackledge, who were the secretary, one or two were complaining about the handlers keep winning all these matches. So Tommy found someone out to ban the Lee handlers from fishing the Wigan matches, the Wigan centre matches. Anyway, Bill Hughes, who was the secretary of Lee, they finished up having a fight.
Never.
Honestly.
Full-blown scrap?
Honestly, on a car park.
And what happened?
Well, years after, they were friends, and Tommy said to me, he says, did he ever tell you when I got him down and battered him? Bill said, you didn't bloody batter me at all. He said, I got you down, didn't I?
And that's all because Lee anglers were winning? Lee
anglers used to win a lot of matches then.
It must have been a right hub of good information and good knowledge. Did that come from fishing casters, do you think?
Yeah, well, obviously. And other handlers from outside of Lee were a bit reluctant. They'd stick to maggot and, you know, the old methods when they used to use squats and do their own maggots. So, and commercial maggots were considered rough maggots. That's how they used to call them. But casters definitely sorted all the better fish out, and they kept winning.
Amazing. And obviously, while we're talking about bait, am I right in thinking for a living you used to work on bait farm? You used to have your own bait farm as a family?
Well, my dad did, And then, because they were all in a sort of cottage industry, and in summer I'd give him a lift and work, and then in winter, obviously, there were nothing doing. And I had several jobs, worked in the mines, I used to drive lorries, anything to get by in winter. And then it started going better, and then, well, there were never no matches in winter. And then it all started handling times winter leagues. But then they used fish sort of flyers in Lee. And there were one particular stretch. There were always 30 pegs on it, and they were only 10 yards apart. And they used to have a match on Sunday morning and one on Sunday afternoon, the same pegs.
2 in a day?
And he used fish well. On one particular match, my dad had 8 pounder roach, 2 hours. Tremendous weight that were. And very often 3 and 4 pounder win the match after the Sunday afternoon match. I mean, just imagine now on a canal 10 yards apart, there'd be nothing caught.
2 matches in a day?
2 matches in a day, and it used fish well. But then Lee was surrounded with coal mines and spinning mills, and warm water used to go in the canal. So it used fish well in winter.
What sort of venues did you learn to fish on, Kevin? What were your upbringing? Were it on a lot of these canals?
Well, they were all just canals, and well, I can remember I were only 14 and we fished at Adlington and had a big 3 pound, and there were 300 to 400 in the match, and that were enough to win it.
And you were 13, 14 years old?
But then, there were a miss of, I don't really know, and obviously I used to fish matches with my dad, and I obviously did all right. And but then he were pretty good, my dad, and he were really way ahead of in time of the other handlers. But there were a lot of good handlers in Lee. It really was. And they just come up and start catching fish, and they did well.
Obviously, I want to ask you a couple of things about your dad, Benny. What, at the time, he was clearly light years ahead of everyone else, and he's obviously passed some of that stuff on to you. You've took it and adapted it, because so much of what we do today comes from what you guys did back then. What did he do at the time back then that stood him apart from the rest? What were it presentation, rigs, his bait? What edges did he have?
Were just like the several handlers these days, like Benny, natural handlers. They just do things, just by chance, and they get them to work. And there's handlers today do that. And there's handlers have to work hard, and really try hard to compete. But whereas others just take it for granted, and it's just there naturally.
And he definitely had that.
I think so.
Let's talk a little bit about some early big matches that you remember fishing and winning. I mean, I've got a big list from in front of me, but some of the ones that you mentioned when we had our little chat before, Evening Chronicle, 20 years of age with 1,200 anglers in.
1,200 in it.
That's amazing. Like, you talk about the first match you ever won, 200 or 300 on a canal, and you talk about it blasé. There's not many 100 peg matches nowadays.
Well,
never mind.
Not now, Matt. But then there weren't that many matches in them days, and there were different areas that have a match. Whereas here, when it got really going, match fishing, there were matches up and down the country with several hundred in them. Whereas them days, they were just saying the Northwest one particular match. And this match was the Evening Chronicle match, and it were fished on Bridgewater Canal from Stretford, and there were 1,200 pegs, and it went through to Altrincham and then into the Warrington water, which were the more you got to Warrington, the better it was. And I were fortunate to draw 4 pegs from the end. And it were casters then, obviously early days, waddler and caster, and a lot of stick float fishing when the conditions were right. However, it weren't as good, and I finished up using pinkies and caught 5 pound odd. The MPEG was a fella from Lee, window cleaner, and he had 3 pound odd, the MPEG. About 30 pegs to my left, there were another Lee handler, and he had a big 4 pound. He was second. And then Benny, about 600 and somewhat, had a big 2 pound, and he was 4th in the match.
Wow.
So Benny had beat 1,150 men, and it were only because we were in the better part of the canal. Otherwise, Benny had won that.
So were they all, top 4 were all anglers
Lee.
from Lee?
Yes.
Out of 1,200?
Yes.
Which backs up what you said to start with.
Well, that were a one-off 1,200 match, but most of the matches were 300-400.
How many's in the national now, Matt? What's in First Division National?
I reckon it's teams of 10 and there's 48 teams.
So 400 and odd. That's the First Division National. What these are?
Fishing
every
in-
weekend.
It's crazy.
Well,
It is
it's
crazy.
changed, isn't it?
I would love to have been, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and fish some of them and see some of them. I honestly would. It's so different.
I remember the Weaver ones here. I remember the guy walking. Lostock Club, the draw, remember? And he walked, and newsagents on the corner here, which is a mile away. And the fella in the paper shop was Alan Barron. And he says to him, he says, "Where's Hartford Bridge?" He's like, "Oh," he said, "it's," so you know where it is. So it's like, what is it, 5 miles from here?
What, and he's got his tackle?
And he's walked there, and then, you know where he was? Up on top.
Top at long.
At Ulcis. So then he's at walk another mile there.
No.
And he walked with his gear. Yeah, he come on train.
Unbelievable. Different, completely different area though. It's magical. It really
Well,
is.
You couldn't do it now with your gear, could you?
But don't forget, nobody carried, and everything went in a wicker basket.
Well,
Net, bait, and everything.
What do you think now when you see people with these barrows loaded up with stuff, Kevin? What goes through your mind?
I see him coming, and I said, "I don't know about a trolley. You need a bloody furniture van for that lot."
you not see him in Ireland this year?
No, I didn't draw near Kevin. I didn't see him.
Well, did you never
Good
see him in the
God.
draw with the great big lad, strapping lad Ben?
No, you'll have to show me this
Oh.
year.
That was his gilly. That was his trolley, Ben.
Ben,
Have you got your own helper in Ireland then?
I had this year. I couldn't fish without him this
Yeah.
year.
Mind you, nearly didn't fish with him when I sent you wrong section.
I sent me the wrong section, Ronnie.
You got wrong wrong Bow Island.
Brilliant.
Uh,
Brilliant. It
didn't
is.
tell me off for that one, did you?
I've got down here, Kevin, another big one. Embassy Elimination 1968. And it says it was quite big money that you won for the time. Tell us a little bit about that match.
Well, that particular match, you had to, I think, get in the top 10. There were different areas. Elimination it was. And the area match, the final, were at Warrington Canal, and I didn't draw very well. And at the time, it were a perch. Roach had seemed to disappear. And anyway, I drawed where I was, and I caught a few perch, and then it went dead. And I thought, well, I'll try caster. So I went, and I'd fished about a third out in the deep water for these perch. And then they went off. I caught them, and I couldn't catch no more. And I went across, and then I caught a roach, and I finished up catching 9 roach, which were, at the time, there were none. Nobody were catching any roach. So consider myself from not a good draw, lucky to catch these roach. However, that got me in the final. And obviously, around the Linley Bank, which were obviously where you wanted to draw.
What venue's this one on?
Coombe Abbey.
Coombe Abbey. So the finals down at Coventry.
Yes, and I'd never see it before. So, and in them days, it was swing tip, bomb. There were no feeders, and one thing, which I were quite capable of was throwing ground bait a long way, because I'm I think I've got the right stature in build, and I always referred to as Big Kev. And like on that particular match, our Evening Chronicle match, there were a photo in the Evening Chronicle, me, and I was receiving my prize, and I was just actually towered above the guy who were presenting the, and now from 6'2" to 5'9", they still call me Big Kevin. My mate said, if you shrink anymore, you'll get a good job in the circus as a midget. I said, bugger off, Roy. So then, which, are quite capable of throwing ground bait a long way out, because in them days, everything had to be fed by hand. There were no catapults. However, things went well, and I started catching bream, and it was good. And I had 31 pound, and just double figures were second. I won it easy.
Wow.
And it was 2,000 quid.
That's in
which
1968.
at the time were a massive prize that. And in fact,
Buy an house.
you could buy 2 good terraced houses with that.
That's mind blowing. Toby, he's from down south. That's just, I can see his head coming off the other side of the computer here. You could buy 2 houses.
Yes. And there's good prizes to be won. No big money. You can't buy 1 terraced house with it.
No.
So you can tell what it were worth. But fortunately, I didn't need that money. I already had my own house, which, I won a few quid over. Me and my dad used to share, and we'd done all right. And I bought a terraced house with the proceeds of what I'd won. So I was all right with that. So I didn't need that money as such.
Wow.
I wasn't desperate for it.
So you bought your first house from your winnings from fishing
Yes.
matches. There's not many people can say that they can do that in this day and age, is there? Rod?
Not a chance.
Amazing.
Well, don't forget, things didn't cost that much in them days.
No, but
You
it's
see-
all relative, isn't it?
And
How
whereas
much was a pint
today,
then?
there's handlers, they've got a family, they've got a mortgage, and it's not easy.
No, it's tough. It's tough.
And just as a matter of fact, in Ireland, for instance, me and Baz came a working with me, and
This is Baz Smith,
Baz
isn't it?
Smith.
Yeah.
We used to share, and with a tremendous time in Ireland, really. He used to pay all the ferries, the digs, the entrance fee, and out of the pot what we'd won.
You never touched it, did you? They're all in envelopes.
And Baz used to keep them, he was the accountant. And we had 3 share outs for 20,000 odd quid.
Never.
That were between us.
And that's
And
some years ago.
Everything had been paid. So
Well, there was checks, weren't there? I remember Baz had
We were-
one
we-
that was a check had not been cashed.
we were lucky.
Hmm.
We were lucky. And at that time, a lot of handlers used to go and fishing for bream. And the bream, it were a no-no.
Hmm.
And we were catching roach, and we had it to ourselves, really.
Phenomenal.
And it's tremendous to have a good hobby, what you like, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Hmm. Mm.
It really is.
You got to be good at
Really
it as well.
appreciate that.
Yeah, you've got to be good at it, and you clearly were years and years
Spent
ahead of
the
your
money
time.
that we won though in Ireland, didn't you? I remember.
Go on, tell us about this.
Oh, where were we? Ballyscullion Lodge on the Ban.
They were on the lower band.
Mm.
So Portland home predominantly, and there was new ferries and Antrim, weren't there? So anyway, I'd have been, what was I, 20, 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was sharing a room with him, so that's another story. He had a cold. So I'd go out with Jolly, my mate, out on the town, Magrafelt. Come back in, he stood there waiting up for me, 3 a.m.
Who, Kevin?
Come and rub this Vic on my back. I had this cold. And then, so as soon as they did it, it's like, oh, he's in now, I'll go sleep. And snored like you can't believe it. And I'm like, oh, beds are only that far apart. Horrendous. Anyway, so we ended up sharing.
Mm.
So I'm like, oh, brilliant, you know what I mean? Sharing with Kevin. So anyway, I won and he come second.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. And then, so he's like, right, come on, we'll go out celebrating. So this bar, Central Bar, he says, now stand there. I says, what's that for? He says, check that no other fucker comes in while I'm getting them in. And I've got, here, these are them. Have you ever, Lucky Notes?
I've heard in Ireland you talk about kissing the notes.
So,
You still got it.
What?
so what am I now? So these are 30 years old, these.
What? These are the notes from that match.
We both won an £100 note each and a £50 note each. And I've got them here.
Never.
I have,
Anyone listening, he's going in his wallet here. If you're driving or listening in. No.
You've got to be a bit careful with him.
Can I touch them?
Go on. We
That-
kiss them.
That is amazing.
And that's so I won them when I was sharing with him.
150 quid.
Well, no, I don't know what we won, but in the money, there was a £100 note and a £50 note. And I thought, well, I'd never seen an £100 note before.
Look at that.
So I thought, well, I'm never ever spending them. Because you can't get better than that, first and second. We both ate a lot of fish as well, didn't we? 30 kilos and stuff every day
fishing.
and that.
That's, I know it sounds a bit soppy, but that's special. That is like the notes you won fishing a match with Kevin Ashurst.
Oh, on
Look
the
at
other
him.
side, that's my dad.
Amazing.
It's his certificate. So I'll keep them all in there.
On that, he asked me, he said, what are you doing? I don't think Baz had gone. Well, obviously he won't be there. And I'd been sharing, so Roddy said, oh, he's sharing. I said, yeah. I've never really shared with anybody, and only my dad and Baz. Well, then when Roddy was there, he said, shall we share? I said, aye.
Unbelievable. Not many people can say they've got that though. But that
Yeah.
just shows like to yourself as well what it means. Most people got the money, let's spend it or whatever. But to keep that,
it was different. It's other people told me. See, the problem is with me, him and my dad were mates. I was born, whatever, and
obviously Mal Scott's your old man, isn't he?
and he had the maggot farm, so Shop was buying it, and I was just always with my dad. My dad was always with him and Baz, and I've just been brought up knowing him. And like, yeah, he's fished for England, he's all right. And then it's like you realise as you get older, so do you realise how good he is? You know, he's like the best that's ever been and everything else. And I'm like, oh, no, not really. He's just Kevin, isn't he? He's my mate, isn't he?
That's me.
And he, you know, well, ever since my dad passed, I don't know, we speak all the time. And I don't realise, do you know what I mean? But that, I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to keep that because there's not many people. Well, there you go. There's probably only 3 or 4 people ever shared with them, and I'm one of them. So I thought, well, that's that, isn't it?
It's magic.
keep it.
People will really appreciate you sharing that, mate. It's special.
Well, it's me and Bud started it all off, and it's like, right, come on. I said, you've got to kiss it. I'm dead superstitious fishing.
Are you
Park
really?
in the same place, I wear the same clothes, can't have a shower. But if I do rubbish, then you've got to have a shower to wash the bad luck off, and I'm like that. So I kissed these notes and then started winning. I'm like, right, Bud, we've got to kiss these every time. So we'd be sat in the pub at midnight, leathered, kissing this £100 note that I shared with him.
Phenomenal. And you still do it
That's
now?
Yeah, all the time, yeah.
Great
ever
story, that.
ever there at a festival in contention, then kiss that right before you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I've got here a match, Kevin, another big one. It's ridiculous. Obviously, we could talk about so many, but I always remember people bringing this event up, and I still hear about it nowadays. Gladden Masters,
Yes.
1972. I mean, that's 20 years before I were even born. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Well, I got obviously invited. It were an invite, and it were on a Friday when that match were on, and we were a bit busy, and there were only two of us at the farm. I had this fellow working with me, Albert, and I said, "Look, Albert, I'm fishing this match." I said, "But I'll come in early and give you a good start." So anyway, I thought, right, I'll get a couple of hours in, and got there about 4:30. Next thing, Albert's there. I said, "Good heavens, Albert." Right, I thought, why early? I'll come early. Anyway, get him a good start, and I said, right, I'll leaving you now. So I went home, got changed, set off, and then I got to Stratford, it were, on the Avon, and I was late. Everybody had gone, and Ian Watkins, who rep for a few firms, Ian, he said, well, your peg's left. Everybody's drawn, but there's one peg left. So I said, right, it's okay, where is it? I said, well, I'll walk across this field, and I'm there. Never saw anybody. So I gets down, and I'm ready. Well, them days, just rod, stick float, and that were it. And anyway, shouted all in, starts fishing, and it weren't great, but I kept catching a few and just trickling down, a couple of rod lengths out, and then all out come, and I gets on top, packed up, and pegged below me were Ivan.
Ivan Marks.
Ivan, yes. How have you done? I said, not so good, Ivan. I said, what have you had? He said, I've knocked £2. He said, I think £4 going to win it, you know, and the forecast is Ray Mumford. Well, I said, I think I might have £4. Well, they come up with the scales, and it were Ray Mumford had £4 on. And I put him on the scales. Ivan had £2. He was right what he said, but then I had £6.
Wow.
Won the match. £1,000 it were to win the match. And Ray, he was a funny fella, Ray, and really, he'd not a lot of time for the southern handlers. He was so secretive, and I think that really was his downfall, because he was a decent handler, Ray, and actually, he'd do anything for me. Really anything. I couldn't call him to anybody, and other people have called him, but not for me. He'd do anything. Ask me, did I want anything? And Ray used to make some superb waddlers, and he used to mottle them, like camouflage them.
Make them look all nice.
Oh, and he'd say, here's some waddlers for you there, Kevin. And yeah, he was good to me, Ray.
Where was he from, Ray Mumford, Kevin?
He come from Romford, I think.
Romford way.
Kent.
Right.
He was around there, and Ray, when he used to go there, collar and tie, always smart.
A lot of people talk about him.
Yeah.
Can you? Is he still about, or is he not here?
I'm
sure he's from Essex.
He was a good handler, and that his downfall were with him being so secretive. And handlers from the south have told me if he's been fishing, pleasure fishing, and they've gone to him, and he wouldn't fish while they were there.
Wow.
And he says, go on, bugger off, I'm not fishing until you go.
Mind you, Sean says the same about Matt.
But
he's secretive, apparently.
Is that what he says?
Oh, yeah, he says you're awful, yeah.
I'm coming for you, Sean Ashby.
That's not my
And
way,
Cam, don't leave him out.
How are you on the bank, Kevin, or how at that time when you're fishing and you're, winning everything. How did you conduct yourself on the bank?
If anybody, it didn't matter how many watched me, behind me, as long as they were quiet and they didn't start talking what they'd caught. If they started talking what they'd caught and then maybe were having a bad spell, I'd tell them. So, look, either keep quiet or bugger off. But it didn't matter how many watched me.
Polite, was it?
Well, the words
I've heard a couple worse than that.
Keep quiet or bugger off.
Well,
it was a bit stronger than that.
I didn't mind. But, obviously, you've always got the bankside experts. Not good enough to fish the match, but telling different ones round them what the handler's doing wrong.
They used to get on your nerves a little bit, I'm assuming.
Oh, God.
Who's the worst one you've had? Have you ever had a real bad bankside expert?
Not particularly, because
I'll be up there.
I think I were a bit respected anyway. So I think what I said, most of guys took notice. But then, I'm not that sort of a guy. I just get on with things and not a lot bothers me.
Well, when you read some of these results, obviously the fishing does the talking, and it does most of the time with good anglers, I think. I really think it does. Another one on my list to ask you about, Kevin, is another match at Coombe Abbey, a Pro-Am match. And there's quite an interesting story to this one. Obviously, I think this is after the previous match you spoke about Coombe.
That were, I think it were 79 this, and I'll tell you why I know it were then. Stan Peter Stan used to do an article in the Sun, and he was a good handler actually, Stan. And it were a competition writing on whatever, how they got it to the amateur to fish with a professional guy. And anyway, this lad, he rang me up. He said, "I've drawed with you, Kevin." And I said, "Well, don't worry, I'll bring you bait and tell you what to do, what I think." Anyway, we got there, and this were on the Linley Bank, and I were not far from where I'd won the Coombe Abbey match. And anyway, we started fishing, and it were nobody's catching. And there were a guy, Bill Deacon, he was the secretary of Coventry, and I know we went to some thing over the World Championship team with Stan Smith, which was at Coventry or Coleshill, where Stan lived. And on the way back, we went to Coombe Abbey and had a walk round to look at it. And Bill Deacon were fishing there. Only a tremendous catch, roach on tours. Really tremendous catch he had. And in fact, I put a feature in the Handling Times about the rock bottom price, and they all went mad at me. They shoved the price, they shoved the day ticket up. However, I'm fishing this match and I've not had a bite. So done about an hour and a half. Bill come to me, and I said, "No, I've not had a bite, Bill." He said, "What are you fishing with?" I said, "Well, I've double maggot on a 16s. He says, "Well, try this, put a 22 on a single maggot." He says, "Sometimes it works on here." I thought, right, local knowledge. I've always been a believer in that. So even though the handlers maybe not be great, at least they probably know something what can be a bit of benefit to you. So however, I thought, right, 22 single maggot, did about 10 minutes, and I thought, this was swing tip and bomb before the feeder. Then the went up, £5 bream.
After scaling down?
Took me about 10 minutes, get a bite, and I thought, well, and I finished up catching 6, £24. And it were a prize of £500 between the pro-am, between you. Anyway, this lad, he were a bit upset really because he'd not had a bite. I said, Luke, I said half the match he's not had a bite. The good handlers have not had a bite, don't worry about it. So then that were, that were nice, for a guy to come to me, and he was really chuffed, well pleased.
So you won it, even though he didn't have a bite, you still won?
They were much catched anyway. I think about double figures were second.
Wow.
No, not half of them didn't catch. The lake were clear, and they obviously weren't having it. But whether I'd have caught sticking where I did, I don't know. But with what Bill told me, it won me the match. I didn't lose any. Took me time, took me a while to get them out, but then I didn't lose any. So everything worked out well.
People don't fish like that for bream nowadays. It makes you wonder how many times have they sat there with a 14 on, 2 worms or 3 maggots, and if they did scale, I wonder if they are in your peg and you don't catch them.
Well, there were one particular match on the 7 at Birmingham, and this guy said, well, I were at 7 Stoke. He says, there's 3 populars up there, Kevin. He said, and the best peg is in the middle of the populars, but I were before them. So I thought, just fish bream. Same again, bomb, but then it was quiver tip because there's 7 pools. And I'd done a while, an odd gudgeon and daddy rough, and I thought, then next thing, caught one. And I finished up with £15. And this fella says, Kevin's £15, and this other guy who had no credit for anybody, he says, he's been catching mugs fish. Mugs fish? He told me this guy. Bream, he says, the mugs fish. I thought, mugs fish? I don't think the mugs, when you know they're in your peg and you can't catch them because you're getting line bites and can't catch them. They're not mugs then, are they?
Damn right.
But that were him. No credit for anybody. Everybody who caught fish were on a dolly.
You get people
fish.
like that, don't you? You still get them there.
Well,
you do. I've got another one here I've got to ask you about, Kevin. The Intrepid on the 7, which weren't long after.
that was the week after the Pro-Am match.
Tell me a little bit about that, because that's a real interesting match.
Well, what happened then, there was a sort of a forum down south. Stan Smith, he was the manager then.
He was the England
manager, Stan. And I'd gone with Ian Heaps. And me and Ian had gone down there together, and my tattle were at Lee, and my dad got my bait ready, and a good friend of ours, Jack Lloyd, who was also a maggot farmer, he come odd time, Jack, with me, World Championships, and odd matches he'd come with me. And he brought my tattle or my bait, what my dad had sent. And anyway, we got there, and there were a bookie there. So 14 to 1 hour. I put £50 each way on myself. The only time I've ever gambled is on myself. However, I drawed right. And the method were apparently down the side with a stick float. And I looked at it, I thought, crying out for the waddler here. So I started, and waddler, ground bait and caster, and I had double maggot, and I started catching chub, an odd roach or 2. And during the match, there were, one or two, are you catching? I said, well, is anybody catching? Yes, you. I thought, well, that's all right. And I knew I was doing all right, and I thought, well, I'll be thereabouts, I think.
Mm.
So then after the whistle went, put them on the scales, £26. Next weight, £14, Waddler. Colin Perry, that were from Nottingham.
Yeah, I know, Colin.
Third, Stampeacher, Waddler, £12. And then there were good handlers there and all, £7, £8 on the stick. So obviously it was bob on. So that they were the week after the Pro-Am match. So, and that were £1,000 to win that. That were Intrepid, and that were the second time as I'd won it. And actually, my lady were in France, and she got an English paper, and next thing she said, hey, he's won it. She saw Terry Smith had put it in. He used to write a few articles on fishing. I don't know what paper, but that were in 79, that.
Isn't it mad that your missus is in France?
She saw it.
And
she saw it.
to find out that you'd won the
You
match,
won
she
it.
had to buy an English paper in France just to see that her husband had
No,
won.
no, you didn't do that.
I tell
She
you what's
just
mad.
bought it.
He knew where she was. I didn't know last holiday I was on, and I knew who was second and third.
Exactly.
What's all that about?
Unreal. Honestly, I listened to it. Kevin, I listened to you telling a story, and I feel like I'm sat next to you fishing. Like when you're throwing these balls of ground bait in full of casters on 7 fishing.
But it's so vivid. His memory's so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean about a match? Like, who can remember second and third, and then the weights?
And he had a 50 quid.
freak.
What happened with this 50 quid either way on yourself? Obviously, you won some money off that as well.
Well, I won that, yes, and I just thought, well, book is there,
That'd have
I'll
been
have a
£1,000
bet.
quid, would it?
I fancied myself, actually.
How many were on that match, Kevin? That Intrepid?
There'd probably be 40 or, I don't know, it was just an invite match.
Good
There
standard.
might have been 50, but I don't think any more than 50.
Incredible. I want to venture north for the next story, so a few of our Scottish friends will like this one. Tell me a little bit about the Scottish champs in the 70s. There's a bit of a story behind this one.
Oh, God. Well, we went there and we were in this hotel, Robert the Bruce Hotel, it were at Stirling, and it were an arm and a leg. Bass said, me and Bass had gone together, my dad and Brian Lees had gone together. Bass said, I don't fancy paying that. Right, tight bastard, Bass.
No, he's mean, wasn't
Were you really?
And
Oh,
he
he
said,
said
I
he's
don't
got tight,
fancy
he's
that.
mean.
So he said, there's bed and breakfast here. So he knocked on the door. Who come to the door? A fella from Lee.
Never.
He was stopping there. He said, no room. So we had to stop at this hotel. And it was good. the hotel. So we had a few beers at night, and it was strong beer. McEwen's Extra. It were only had 4 or 5 pints. I thought that's enough. Anyway, it had lagged it down all night. Gets up in the morning, gets to the van, wouldn't start. And eventually I got it going, and it was missing. And anyway, we got there. And the guy who was running the match, who fella from Yorkshire, were running it. And he said, your dad's drawn your pegs. Everybody had gone, obviously. And he said, that's your peg and that's Baz's peg. So anyway, I drops Baz off, stops on the main road. He says, it's a fair walk. He says, but you can stop on the road and get across the field, which I did. And there was a ditch there. I just threw my tattle over and managed jumping. Got on the canal bank. And there's a lad from Lee there, Harry Hutchinson. He was tidy handler, Harry. I said, are you catching? He said, yeah. Anyway, I got there. A fella from Wigan was next to me. I said, "Are you catching, Jack?" He said, "I said, "What have you?" He says, 2.5 pound. So I put a couple of balls of ground bait in. He says, "What was that for?" I said, "Well, get some fish in my peg." So I rigs up, throws in an hour late. Just got in on the hour late. And it was good. Had a good match. Everything went right. Started catching. And it was wide where I were.
What was the venue? Fourth and
Fourth
Clyde?
and Clyde Canal. There were 400 in this match.
Flipping heck.
And however, they went off a bit. Then I went across, and it would probably be 20 metres wide. And I threw further over this, fishing the waddler, and caught some more fish. Finished up 12 pound. Won the match. Harry Hutchinson was second. And an hour late, which everything went well. Had a good peg and had a good match. And really good. Baz didn't catch so much. We'd had a next to note, and Brian Lee's a note.
What was second in that one?
Sorry?
What was second in that one?
£10, Harry Hutchinson.
Unbelievable.
He lived near me, Harry. He lived 100 yards from me, Harry. He was second.
400 pegger,
400.
all the way up to Forth and Clyde Canal in Scotland. Few beers, van won't start, get there an hour late and win the match. Great story, that, innit?
Well, I just threw it in an hour
to Toby
late.
today.
Yeah.
These are the good times. Don't forget, I've had some bad times and all. I've had some bad pegs. But there was one particular match I drawed bad, and I said, this fellow was moaning near me, and I said, well, we're here, and that's an end to it. And there were an old handler, Kenny Kendall from Leeds.
Mm.
Don't you ever remember
I've heard the
Kenny?
name. Yeah, I've heard of the name, Kevin.
And he says, what I like about this lad, he doesn't moan and groan about his pegs. He just gets on with it. I said, Kenny, I can pull my face as good as anybody. Kenny Kendall.
I have heard of him, definitely.
Yeah, I have somewhere, yeah.
100%.
But it's right, though. You've got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you?
That's
what makes good days good days.
And I think
you drew a flyer every time.
You can't do it. You can't just sit on a load of fish every time.
No.
But when I listen to these stories, I'm listening to the weights that you're catching. You know, £12 winning a 400 pegger and £5 on the canal. You know, that Evening Chronicle match. Even Gladding Masters, £6 on a.
The proper matches on that, aren't
They
they?
are.
The fishing matches.
The weights are so. It's difficult fishing. 400 pegger, £5
that
winning.
makes the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
It's.
now, I don't know.
I think we're spoilt now. When I listen to these stories and how I think we're spoilt with the actual quality of some of the fishing we get. When I listen to £4, £6 winning, amazing. It is so different.
He's fished the Weaver and what have you, and I tell you what, £2 was a good weight.
Weaver. I've been on Weaver and never see a netting.
What's
Big
the
matches?
Here's a question for you, Kevin, to finish the bit off about some of these big matches. What's the lowest weight you've ever won a big match with? What you consider a big match? What's the lowest weight you've ever won a big one with?
The World Champions, I would say.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're not going to talk about that one yet, because that's a special section.
Knock that up, Matt.
Yeah, we're not talking about that one.
Should have stuck to that, kid.
Oi, it's a great teaser for what's about to come now. Before we move on to England stuff that you touched on there, little teaser, folks, for what's coming. One of the things that strikes me when I look through what we spoke about when we did our little prep chat, Kevin, is the diversity of the venues that you fished and the geographical spread of them. Like, you look at some of these rivers I've got written down here: Witham, Welland, Severn, Wharf at Tadcaster, Yorkshire Ouse, Thames, Calder. Obviously, Trent, different stretches of it. Middle Trent, Tidal Trent, Dunham. Like, you fish so many places up and down the country. And more importantly, and I know you don't like saying it, but you've won matches, big matches, on so many of them venues. That must be something you're mega proud of.
Well, I think it's an achievement, but in them days, if you wanted to fish a big match, you had to travel.
Mm.
And we'd fish the Witham. And, even though it's a good area for fishing round here, there weren't that many big matches. So lots of times there'd be no match on. So we go to the Witham.
How far's Witham for your
120 mile it were.
And how long did that used to take you?
Well, warp 10. It used to take about just over 2 hours, actually. And the best way, snake pass through Sheffield. And you won't believe Sheffield, when I used to go through it Sunday morning, there'd be groups of anglers every half mile waiting for the coach.
Amazing.
Going and fishing club matches.
What, you just see them on the side of road?
There'd be perhaps half a dozen, 8 groups of anglers waiting to get on the coach.
That's just gone now, isn't it? It's not there.
They were all coaches them days when they were fishing club matches.
That's what it was. It
Amazing.
was all little clubs, wasn't it? We used to have them, like Bowling Green did one, and it was like, right, the Trent, right, the Seven. And you'd fill a coach, like.
What did you do with all your gear? Chuck it on coach?
Oh,
It were on
yeah.
there?
Well,
Yeah.
don't forget, Matt, we had no gear then.
No?
Everything in a wicker basket.
Yeah, Old All was that big.
Old all, there were no old all. It were a rod and a bank stick and a landing net handle.
But I bet it was such a nice feel. It makes my eyes stick up on my arm a little bit when I think about like driving across Sheffield, big gangs of anglers next to the road. Like, it's magic that for fishing, isn't it? It really is magic, and we'll probably not see it like that ever again.
No,
We probably won't.
There's only you guys try and get it back like that, isn't there?
That's
You
it.
know, if it weren't for Guru doing what you do with this pathway, it'd be, where
Yeah.
would it be?
Well, hopefully we can keep it going. But tell us a little bit more about Witham, Kevin, because
Witham,
that's a massive match venue. So many people talk about it. What were it like?
Witham were all tip fishing, really, bream. And there were one particular match I'd gone, it was a Boston match. And a lot of these Witham matches were 400 and 500 in them. And that's what they were. You had to write in advance for a ticket. Anyway, I goes this particular day and I drawed right near Horncastle Cut. On either side of me were 2 mates. And there were a national coming up. So they were fishing, see what they could catch. So they're fishing at Rod End and things like that. So I starts off on the tip across. Either side of me, down the side there. And I caught 5 bream. And I think I might have had 13 pound or 9. Not a big weight, but I won the match. And I was lucky to have 2 handlers like that, because the normal Witham handlers, they'd be all on the tip fishing, same as me. And they were like that. They stuck in all day. And I said, well, they said, we were seeing what we can catch.
So
They never threw a tip in.
And you won that?
I won the match. I got it on my own.
Amazing.
And I hadn't a big weight. Didn't fish well that day.
And how many will have been on that? 300-400?
Oh, there'd be 400 or 500 in it.
It's crazy.
In the Boston match.
Again, not a massive weight, is it? Like what we spoke about. It's not a big one. What about other matches on with them? You ever used to fish bloodworm matches or anything like that?
Well,
on
I did, and because bloodworm were allowed on the Trent and on there with them. And I used to go on before bloodworm, and then bloodworm came in. And I had a few double figures. I think the first match I won on it were a back end match, and the river were low. We were sat on the sand, and it were clear. And I fished the bloodworm, and I had a big 5 pound of all rough.
Tommy rough?
All rough. And you won't believe it, I won the match.
Never.
Won the match.
Must have been rock hard, were it?
It was bloody hard. But it were clear, the river were clear and that. And I were on the pound length then. And then, obviously, come the summer matches, and it weren't fishing that well. And I had several double figures unframed. But then one particular match I drew the pound length and had 16 pound. And I had some double figure catcher roach and a few skimmers and won the match. And them days I'd go to work first, 4:30 we used to start. And I'd gone on my own that day. And lots of times, if I read the money, I used to say, someday I knew, could you pick my money up? And I want to get back. Because lots of times I had to do an hour's work to feed the maggots.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what were coming off on Monday needed maybe a bit more feed, and I'd probably throw half a ton to a ton of feed on. So it didn't take me long, but then I had to do it, and then by the time I got home and settled down with bedtime, and then the day after we'd be up at 5:30 anyway. So, lots of times I used to say, can you pick me money up on this particular match? I said to Alan Mayers, I said, Alan, can you pick me money up? Because I knew I'd won the section. I didn't know whether I'd won the match or not. So anyway, I fired off, and anyway, he spoke to me on Monday. Alan, he says, you won the match? Oh, I said, good. He said, but I tell you what, he says, there were one or two whinging about it. And I said, what? Well, he says, there were one particular, and I said, well, I'm not giving him my bloody money next week. I'm not coming. And he said, no, he said, there were a lot of happy handlers about it. And I thought, right. So I said, well, I'll not go again.
And did you not go?
I didn't. No, I didn't go again.
And what were they moaning about? The fact that you'd won, or?
I think it was with Bloodworm on there, and they weren't competing. So I thought, no, I'm not having that. I'll not go again. I did go again, but then obviously I think they banned Bloodworm, and then I'd go and fish as like everybody else. No, I didn't like it.
When you were going there and fishing with Bloodworm, obviously you had a lot of knowledge about that bait that others didn't. What were the edges that you had? What methods did you use when you were fishing Bloodworm? And because to win as much as you did doing it on that venue, you must have had a few things sorted out.
The way it was, I think, looking back at it, obviously the feed. Lots of times you can feed with bloodworm and you can start catching them depending on how big the peg is, and you can feed them again when they go off. But then there's some you feed again and it's never the same. Same as like bread fishing, bread punch fishing, same. So when them pegs, you get a peg like that, then it all depends how you feed. And for instance, you get the Belgians who obviously very good at it. And a lot of their matches they only feed once. And that's in the rule. And they just know how much to feed. And I was talking to this guy and I said, sometimes it's never the same. He says, well, what you've got to do, you've got to put more in and don't feed again. Which sometimes it did work. But obviously, every peg's different. And so it don't happen all the time. But at least having that knowledge and knowing, well, I think this peg will be all right. I'll put so much in. But then sometimes you'll get a good peg and you can top up and they keep coming. And you can always tell when a bloodworm peg's finishing.
Go on, tell me how.
It goes balmy. You get one at the back of the other as soon as you go in, and you know then the peg's finishing. And then all at once, they'll stop. So maybe if you feed again, hopefully, if it's a good peg, you'll start catching again. But that's a fact that when the peg's finishing, you'll be going in and there'll be instant bites.
And for people listening, Kevin, to explain that to me, what's the reason for that? Is it because your joker's running out? There's less of
That's
it?
right, yes, and there's not a lot of feed left, so when you're going in, yours is there and they're at it straight away, immediately.
Amazing that, isn't it?
There's a lot of just think, oh yeah, Peg's good now.
Yeah. But obviously,
he's already thinking it's going to run out.
I might need to top up here in a minute. Yeah. Amazing info.
Well, you know, the more you fish with it, then you just obviously learn things, don't you? And that's probably one of my assets and all I've had. Lots of times I'd always fished on after a match.
Really? Don't pack up and get off, just...
Oh, Dick used to go mad.
Dick Clegg? Go on.
Well, I'd fish 3 hours, then I'd fish, when we were fishing the session, fish another 3 hours, weigh in, and then carry on fishing, as he used to say. Ashurst, pack up now.
Remember when you left Baz in Ireland?
Actually, Dick, he worked hard, Dick. Put a lot of effort in that job.
Well, we'll have a good chat about him when we talk about England stuff in a bit, because I want to ask you about Dick, definitely. While we're talking about rivers, we mentioned low weights earlier, and I remember you talking to me about a particular match on Welland, a big one.
Yes.
Another win on a different river, Eastern Winter League, I'm sure you said it was.
It were an Eastern, yes, we fished with Leicester. And it were a tough day. And fished Wadler, maggot. And I'd only £4 odd. And roach, and had 2 or 3 little skimmers, 6-ounce skimmers. But then it were enough to win the match. There were another £4 that day. But I just had enough to win it. 200 pegger? We might have been 250. In these winter leagues, when they first started, there were always 200 and odd in them.
Ridiculous.
The Northwest here were always 250 in them.
Amazing matches. Did you fish many matches over my way, Kevin? Like Yorkshire on Ouse, or obviously there's them northern rivers that way, isn't there? Did you ever come over?
Well, I used to like the Wharf. Wharf were a river where I always felt I'd feed on lots of times. I won one match on it, and I framed a time or two, but I used to start catching them at the end, and I used to enjoy that. Not suddenly, and then if I caught them at the end, yes, I'd enjoy it.
And what were you fishing for on Wharf?
They were dace.
Right. And
they weren't easy to catch.
Go on, what were crack? Because they're buggers sometimes, they are.
Well, Henry Pollard, he said to me this day, he said, have you missed any bites? I said, not really, Henry. Oh, he said, you've been catching the easy ones. He said, the only time you'll miss bites here, he says, tell lies about it. The only time you don't miss any bites on this river, tell lies about it. Henry.
I had one with him once in Winsford. So I forget who the angler was, you might know. His maggot kept doubling over. Who was the angler? He's on Red Lion. So he's walking. I don't know why he's walking and not fishing, where maybe he wasn't catching or whatever. And he's walking down. I don't know. I can remember.
Where's this? Winsford Flash?
No, it's the river.
Right.
Winsford
River. It might have been. It was like Andy Hamlet or someone like that. It's a good few years ago, like. You know when your maggot doubles over and it's a nightmare. And it can happen a few times in the match, can't it?
Yeah.
And they're not having it right, doubles over. And he's like, oh, and he's like this. He said, it's happened again. So he's there and he looks like, he says, you know, stop that, don't you? So he looks, he's gone, how? Fish caster. I'm walked off. All right.
Characters.
It's right though, isn't it?
I know, yeah. But everyone's like holding the breath. How would you stop this? Your maggot doubling over. Fish caster. Walked off. Oh, magic.
I don't know. What about Ouse, Kevin? You ever fish Yorkshire Ouse?
Once.
No good?
Well, I drew above York, and you've got to draw below York below York, apparently. Anyway, I got there and it just looked like 7. I thought it'd be all right here. So I starts off on a stick, gets 2 4 or 5 ounce roach after a while, like, and then I thought, I'll go down the middle. So I went down the middle, ground bait caster, and I caught a few. And I thought, right, packed up, binned them. Looked, they're about £3. This fellow below me says, what are you doing? I said, only about £3. You don't throw £3 back here. Well, it looked like the 7 to me, double figures. Well, my dad was below York, and he hadn't catch so much. So he said, what have you had? I said, about £3. What? Throw them back? You bloody idiot. I said, why? £4 won the match.
No.
£3 out of a second.
So you'd have framed?
I don't know. If you don't weigh, Matt,
Well,
you've FA.
It's true, innit?
You've FA if you don't weigh.
If you don't wear, you've FA. It's true, innit?
I know,
Fact.
100%. I've got to ask you about the Trent, Kevin, because it's
Yes.
my favourite venue. We talk about this river so much in our fishing on the podcast. You got to see the Trent through several different stages of it,
Yes.
and you fished a lot of matches on it. What do you remember about the Trent, and what matches stick out in your mind from the Trent?
The first match, really, I fished on it. I think it were Nottingham fished again, the Lancashire, and I didn't catch a lot, but my dad won the match with £17. I think that were, maybe I'd fished it on a club match when I was younger, but then that's when we started to fish the Trent. And, well, after that, matches were on it, and, well, I used to go and, I did well on it. The only place I didn't do well were Dunham. And I said, I couldn't catch on it. I fished, I think about 2 or 3 matches. I said, I'm not coming here again. And Ken Booth says, like the Manchester handler, who Ken had a good run on the Trent. He said, there's nothing wrong with it. I said, it's crap here. He said, Kevin, you're doing bad. He says, there's nothing wrong with it. So anyway, I went again. On next 3 visits, 3 wins.
Won the match at Dunham.
3 wins at Dunham.
And what kind of fishing was that, Kevin?
Well, the first match I won, I rode a dolly just below the bridge. I goes in the bag and does my peg, and the guy on the draw were writing it down. He says, that's got a good hole here, lad. Rotherham match it were. And I said, oh, well, I knew. So I says to my dad, I said, look where I've drawn here. Right, he were off. We used to park and then walk over the bridge. Because it were a toll bridge, that.
Yeah, still
You
is.
had to pay, still is.
Yeah.
He used to charge you a penny to go over. So we parked and I said, I'm not coming yet. He says, right. I said, oh. So I waited till everybody had gone, and then I got down. We're getting down there and folk walking past them. Well, bloody hell. Luke, who's here? I'm not having that. So anyway, I got down. 4-hour match, £23.
Nah, roach.
Roach, everything spot on. Never lost a fish and hardly missed a bite. One of them superb days when everything went well. Started as I finished. Anyway, I won the match quite easy. And the next time I went, I caught a few, or about 20 pegs below the bridge. Then the tide come, caught, run back, caught, And then it started running back, finished. And then for some reason, after about half an hour, started catching again, and it was solid. And I won the match with £20.
What, roach again?
Roach.
And what bait were you using, Kevin?
Caster.
Just loose feeding casters?
Just loose feeding caster. And for some reason, they just switched.
Mm.
I thought that's the end of it, because I didn't think it was that good where I were. But then it just exploded.
What time of year was that?
It'll be about November. And then the match after, I drew right down, and I were towards Lauterton, which we used to walk down, good walks. And anyway, I started fishing, couldn't catch. A fellow above me caught one or two. I know I were on caster, but I had some maggots. I'd been the 7 the day before, and they were still in my bag, so I said, "What are you catching on?" I said to this guy above me. He said, "Maggot." So I thought, "Oh, I'll try maggot." £4 I had. That were enough to win the match.
Never.
The guy above me said, "Bloody hell, Kevin, I wish I hadn't have told you." He £2 odd he had. I said, well, I had to ask you. And that's how I am. I'm not too bloody big not to ask. I do ask. You know, even though I might be a nosy bastard, but I'll ask.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't ask, you don't get out.
But did you used to, if people asked you, were you secretive, or
No.
did you always used to let people?
No, I've never done that, Matt. I've never been smart.
Always told them what you've done.
I don't like smart. Anybody smart, I've no time for them.
Like it.
No.
When you used to fish these matches on Trent, Kevin, people talk about you used to have to fish dead light, little hooks and all that. Were that a thing? Was it something you used to do?
No, you didn't. You're 16s. Sometimes, if it were hard, you'd bury a caster. Sometimes you'd stook it on like a maggot. But there was one match. Well, it was a charity match, and you could have as many draws as you wanted. Anyway, I drawed this peg, and it were Frank Barlow. He said, "You're at top at Shellers there, Kevin." He said, "The good pegs, that's best part of it." So anyway, from Shelford, where the ferry were facing the outflow, I walked down. And there I gets there. There was this guy from Manchester, Errol Booth, Ken Booth's brother. Then there were Ivan. Then there were an empty peg and myself. So anyway, we starts fishing. Oh, and it was good, really good. And we're all catching. And weighed in. There were no scales or something, so we were a long time weighing in. And a guy below me, he said, "Well, I like go, Kevin." He says, "My mate," he says, "Can you have a look at me fish and tell me what I've got?" He said, "Then I can tell my mate what I've got." And I said, "There's about £20 there." I give him the benefit of the doubt, but, you know, he was dead pleased with that. I said, "There's £20 there." Well, he said, "I like go." He said, "I can't wait." So he went. Anyway, the scales come. 41.11 I had.
No. Roach.
Ivan had 38 and Errol Booth had 39. 3 of us in a line for second and third.
What, on Shelford?
On Shelford Shellers, the top end. And I only went because Frank Barlow told me, he says, "Kevin, them at best pegs."
Wow.
So the good pegs stop at Shellers.
Great days fishing, that,
Good,
innit?
bloody good it were.
On stick, Kevin?
Stick float.
Casters again?
Just caster. We're all... There were me and Ivan stood up, Errol was sat down. He was sat down, hot box.
Phenomenal.
We all used to stand up then.
Amazing fishing, though. Amazing
It
fishing.
was bloody good. It was good. That fished in a t-shirt. It was in October, and it were there were a bit of drizzle and all. And And Ivan said, well, if he's fishing like that, I can. So we never put a coat on or anything.
Were there ever any feeder fishing on Trent then,
Not
Kevin?
then.
All float?
Well, it were feeder fishing then. It weren't. It were just bomb. I think it were banned. Feeder were banned.
Right.
In the early days, a swim feeder were banned.
That's amazing, isn't it? 'Cause
Yes,
I mean, if you went on Trent now in a match, half at field would just be sat, more than half at field,
Yeah, 100%.
just watching a tipping air like. Whereas then it must have been completely opposite. Everyone sat fishing afloat.
Well, it were them days. Well,
Mm.
then the river's changed, hasn't it?
Of course
Big
it has.
fish.
A lot of barbel, bream.
Big fish.
Were they ever in there, Kevin, do you think, at the time? Or do you think they've...
Nah, they must have been in. But not in the numbers, I think, as what... I mean, years ago, me and my dad used to go up and down to catch bream. There were you couldn't catch any bream here.
Yeah.
The only place you could catch bream, Shropshire Union Canal.
Crazy, isn't it? And they're so dominant.
Now, lots of matches you need bream in your net to win.
Something that I'm really looking forward to asking you about and talking to you about is obviously fishing for England side of things, Kevin. How did fishing for England come about for you? Where did it start? When did you first get asked?
It started when I fished a national on the Trent, and I worked fourth actually. And so top weight, and we fished with Stoke. Stoke won it. So then, in them days, the England team were picked from the first 5 of the national championship.
Got you.
So then they fished for England. If you wanted, you could fish, and that's where it were. And I was on the Juliana Canal. It were in Holland, and I'd had good catches practicing. Bernard Donovan was the England manager, and the press come in and he says Kevin will win be the world champion. And I had a few double figures on caster. However, we watched them fishing bloodworm and they were catching more. Anyway, I drawed my peg and I were in this first section. And I had a bloody ball ache.
Go on. What do you mean a ball ache?
Everything were all balls. Couldn't catch. And I kept thinking, they'll come, and they never come. And it were a bad peg, but I made it worse. You can understand somebody saying, well, you're a bad peg, but I made it into a good one. Well, this, I made it worse. And there's a good French handler at side of me, and he couldn't catch. And he finished up catching a few bleak to get a bit of a weight. But it were one in my section, the M-Peg. Van den Heim won it.
Marcel. Did he really? That was one of the
Yes.
years he won the world champs?
Yes, he won it.
Wow.
He won it, the M-Peg. It was a good venue, and for some reason, I've obviously made a balls of it somewhere. And I don't know. It all went wrong, and I've been loose feeding, and it was a deep canal, about 10 foot. And maybe I should have fished ground bait, I don't know.
How did you feel? Obviously, that's your first world champs.
Bloody hell, I was demented.
Did it?
Devastated, because I have been doing well. Really devastated, I thought. But I knew it was my own fault. I've made a mess of. I don't think I could never have won it, and I probably would have never have caught a decent bag of fish. But I think I should have caught more than only ounces.
You know, when you're fishing, are you a kind of angler that's happy to say, "Look, I messed that up. I should have done better there"? Do you tend to do that if you know you've not done well?
Always.
Think that's a healthy thing?
What I do is, if I've not caught so much, I think, well, should I have caught more? This, that, and the other. But, and I think this has been one of my assets, if I've caught a bag of fish, I've never left the bank leaving it like that. I've always thought days after, could I have caught more? I've always felt that way. And lots of times that's why I use fish on after a match.
Try and see what else they were to learn.
That's right.
What about you, Rod? Are you a punisher when you do bad to yourself?
He doesn't.
What you like? Go on.
He just goes and catches, does things. He's a natural handler.
Like we were talking about before.
That's what he does. Puts no effort in it. He just catches them.
Well, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't stop on.
No.
Like, the least time I spend on the bank, the better.
Oh, which are very cool.
But, no, I'm last to my peg and first to leave, yeah.
Straight in boozer?
Yeah. I've only met one that's, actually there's two that's quicker than me at packing up. Frank, Lotken, Nigel Spencer. Him.
He's quicker than you.
Whoa, quickest in the world. And Camza.
No,
Like
he's ridiculously fast at packing up. It's shameful how fast he is at packing up.
I remember best one that we were on was in Ascara, and the scales were on peg 1 and we'd run next to each other 4 and 5. And Sean was moving house at the time, and he normally comes with us. When we phoned him up, we said, guess where we are? Now, do you know the Greenway?
No, never been.
Well, the Greenway, I think, is it a mile from one end to the other?
I've not really.
I've
not been.
Anyway, it's a good. No, I think it might be 5k, so it might be 3 mile from one end to the other, and you can only do 10 mile an hour in your car. They have these rules now. So we weighed in, and all out was at 5 o'clock, and at 5:15 we phoned Sean and said, "Guess where we are?" He says, "You're probably in the car." I said, "No, we're walking in the pub." 15 minutes, and we drove 3 mile.
That's ridiculous.
Isn't it?
That's ridiculous.
Beat that.
Yeah.
But only 2 tip rods, it's feeder match.
Right. Back to fishing for England, Kevin. Obviously, that was your debut, and it's nice to hear that sometimes even people like yourself don't always go right. Like all these years, and you've got the chance to fish for England, and it's not gone right. Where did it go from there?
Well, what happened then? That was, well, no, I felt bad about it really, but then that happened. But then it carried on the year after, and then they decided to start to select a team. And there was this one particular match. I went fished at Stourport. Drew a dolly.
Is this River Severn?
7.
7, yeah.
And there were a bay, and it held 3 pegs, and there were only a few inches of water on the river, and it were right. Anyway, I started fishing, and it were okay. Weighed in, 11 pound I had. And a guy above me, he'd gone for a walk, he couldn't catch. And he said, "It's looking good, Kevin, for you." 4 pound odd a second.
No, in the whole match?
Bloody fish. For some reason, it fished diabolical. And it weren't as though there were much water in. The river were clear. It weren't that cold. Anyway, I got home, had tea. Next thing, knock on the door. I opened the door. Stan Smith.
This is the same night that you've won this match?
Night.
Right.
Stan Smith. I said, "Bloody hell, Stan. Come in, like." He says to me, "Would you like to fish for England?" I said, "I would love to." And that he went visiting the handlers who were going to fish. So it were on in Czechoslovakia. And Ivan fished.
Ivan Marks.
Yes. Jimmy Randall, John Parsons, and so that would be John. There were Jimmy Randall, the first section, John Parsons, myself, Ivan. Who were the other landlord? Can't think who the other landlord were selected. And good heavens.
Weren't Ian, were it?
Can't remember who the fifth handler were.
You'll think of it.
Before him, was it?
Must have
Been
been.
before him.
So, starts fishing, and we were next to France.
Mm.
We had a good match. We were next to this lad from France, cracking handler. Guy Herbert, his name was, Guy Herbert. And I just beat him with a kilo. I won the section.
And what sort of fishing were it, Kevin?
It were a river, somewhat like a big river, bigger than the Severn, and they're about 6-7 foot, going steady, just a steady pull, not much, not a big run on it, and I think about 7-8 kilo. A Dutch fellow won it on the pole with, half his rod and reel. And they were 8 metres a line, so you couldn't go further out.
What, that was the limit?
Limit. That's what they used to do.
What,
You
even
can use
with
a
a reel?
rod and line, you were allowed 15 metres. And you could
Wow.
use an 8 metre pole with 7 metres a line. That was the limit.
Incredible.
It were alternate, they were different. You know, one year were a no limit, and then there were a limit. Anyway, the match but the fish were in range anyway, so you didn't need to go out. Anyway, he won the match, and England were, I think we were second. England.
So that probably first medal you'd won internationally.
Yes.
Nice. And what did you ever, when you went to these early world champs, did you think, I like this, this is a good arena for me to be fishing in? Did it excite you?
I just, I don't think I've ever been like that, Matt. I just took things for granted, really. And, I mean, I've had some good days, I've had some bloody bad days in World Championships.
Go on, tell us about a few, before we talk about good ones, give me a few memorable ones.
Well, I went, we fished in Bulgaria, and it were on a dam. We couldn't practice on it. And then on Saturday, I don't know whether it were, on Friday, we could fish it, but not on the venue. And it was just a natural lake, and we didn't catch much. There were bleak swimming about, and we weren't catching them. The Italian manager, he says, they're ill, them bleak. And we then went Saturday, they took us on coaches to look at the venue, and there were a damn wall. There were 4 sections on this, and a section on the side on the natural bank, and you could see a lot of fish. So I drew on the natural bank, and that was Sunday, and the match were being fished 3 hours, and then they were having the final 3 hours after it.
So World Champs then were 3-hour team match, 3-hour individual.
Individual match after, and you've got to get in the first 4 to get in the final.
Got ya.
So I started fishing and on the Waddler, catching a few bleak. Anyway, they came down, they're catching chub on the wall. I didn't know what size they were or what. Well, Mark Downs, he didn't fish, but he were a reserve mark. And eventually he says to me, look, Kevin, there's no chubby, it's all bleak. You'll have fish for them bleak. He said, you're well down in your section. So then, I mean, I'd had a waddler on and I'd overshotted it, put a swan shot near me who try and get through these bleak. Or get down, try to catch chub. So I caught a few bleak, and eventually I was the last to weigh in, the last section.
Mm.
And I was fourth in the section. So I got in the final. So the final, they were all on this damn wall. And Ian had said, I've made a mess of it. He said, I fished her for out.
This
He
Ian
said,
Eaps.
Ian Eaps. He said, you'll catch them close in. So Ian put me dead right, and it was exactly right what he told me. Looked at my gear, he said, right, 3 metre pole, use that. Another, in my floats, like little balsy, 5BB balsy, what I'll probably use on the Trent or the 7. He said, that'll do you. So anyway, I tied, don't forget I'm rigging up just before the match is ready to start.
Mm.
Not a lot of time. I was the last to weigh. Others had drawn before me. So anyway, I gets there. And I'm obviously in a rush. Rigged up, line on, float, everything's right. Starts fishing. And everything Ian said was spot on. Perfect information. Got everything right, and I'm on my way. And I'm doing all right. And there were these little chublets like this. They'd be, but bleak were getting on for an ounce. They were decent bleak. And these chublets were maybe 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces at most. So there were bleak and chub mixed in. And they were only like 3 foot deep, just close in. And then all at once, a fucking disaster.
Go on, what happened?
Bloody line come undone where I'd tied it on top of my pole.
Never. What, rig come off? In the World Champs?
Rushing and not tied it on proper. Not coupled it up proper. That's when them days just tied it round the ring at top. So then I picked another up with a crook elastic on. Anyway, eventually, the match were only 2 hours. I lost the match by 11 ounces. I went fourth. And there were double figures, even in that time.
Wow.
There were good weights. Italian guy won it. And Ivan was second. Ivan were only about 4 ounces short.
And this is the World Champs?
World Championship. But then fished it after. It was ridiculous, really, having 2 matches in the day.
It's crazy.
Rush.
It's mental.
And that's what did me. That, I'd have got there. I'm not saying I'd have beat one with a lot, but I think I'd have caught enough to win it.
If your rig hadn't come off?
Yes.
So that's a...
Bastard it were.
Yeah, it's a memory though, that, innit?
Bloody.
Flipping heck.
Well then...
How did you feel? How did you feel at
what
time?
What could I do? You know, like, you'll get some handlers saying it were one of them days. And you know what my reaction is? There's no such a thing. All self-inflicted.
And so do you put that on yourself for rushing about?
Well, that's it. What can I do?
Your fault, or was it? Your last one way in, they've already drawn. They'll be sat on their pegs. Your head will be, it'll be cabbaged, won't it?
Yeah.
You know, so you're rushing straight away, aren't you?
Of course you are.
And don't forget, all them who were there, the winners, they'd already fished the venue before. So they were on an advantage. But then, don't forget, I had first-class information off Ian. So everything he told me, it were right.
11 ounce. So close.
And I'd have got there, I think. Not by much, but, you know, I think I'd have got there.
Did the team do any good in the team event?
No.
No good.
They're only Ivan and myself got in.
Right.
Ken Giles fished, and they just fished her for out. By the time they realised the match were over.
So it's mad that a World Champs is fished in such a small, quick space of time. 2 matches in a day. It's different now, isn't it? It's totally different. And obviously you you witnessed the change in the format of it
Yeah.
and everything, Kevin. But have you had any, while we're talking about memorable world champs and close calls, you had any other close ones like that?
Oh, God. There was one particular match. We was on, Yugoslavia. I didn't draw particularly well the first day, and we'd fished sessions, and I'd done all right practicing. Well, I'd done well practicing, and I'd caught odd handlers. Nearly all of them blanked at some of the matches. The practice matches, and I hadn't. And there was one particular area we hadn't caught so much. And I'd done all right, but I'd not a lot of fish. And I drawed there in the actual championship, and it was a struggle. The MPEG won my section with less than a kilo. Or just over a kilo, less than 2 kilos. There were another peg, a long peg. These pegs were 10 yards apart. And for some reason, somebody had dug a peg out. And they put a peg there, and it was a long peg. So it got like about 15 or 16 yards of a peg instead of a 10-yard or 12-yard peg. They weren't long pegs, and it was pulling hard and deep. Anyway, that was second, and I was third in the section. Then obviously I drawed a different section, and I did well and won the section. And Bob were in that first section. He won that. And then he drawed this peg, this long peg. So he'd would have been peg above me, caught enough win the section. Because that end section didn't fish well anyway. So that was that. And then, we fished at Hungary, and, I did well there practicing. Caught a lot of fish.
Back in Yugoslavia, how did you end up? Where did you end
I
up?
was second. Bob won it, I was second.
So you're second. He just skims over this, doesn't he? Second individual in the world championship.
You come second 3 times.
Yes.
3 times second in a world champs.
Yeah. But him and Bob, you were first and second 2 years running, weren't you? They clapped you in, didn't they? And that, remember that one.
Tell us a little bit about Hungary then as well. I'm assuming that's one of the other second placed.
Well, I drawed. We fished up and down it, and it were good. And we went for a trial on the Saturday, the Friday, a couple of hour sessions. And one section, they didn't fish it. Anyway, I drew that section in the actual match day after. But it didn't make any difference because I caught 5 kilos. Won the section easy. But then there were a section, there were perch at the side, because it were like 4 foot deep near the side. On a 3 metre whip or a 2 metre whip. They were little perch. But then there were decent fish to be had on the long pole, roach and odd skimmers.
What is this Seged on the rowing course, Kevin?
Yeah, it was just like on Pier Point.
Got you.
And about 8-9 foot deep. So I went out, I started catching, and I'm 5 kilos, and I had 2 sturgeon like this.
Sturgeon?
Sturgeon.
In the world champs?
Yes, I had.
That's mad, isn't it?
2 sturgeon. But then there were a section, and I don't know whether Tommy were in it or Dennis, and it were an hard section. In fact, Fuji won the section from my peg, as I drawed day after. When I got there, it were all sand. So it was worst inside peg of the match. It was the only inside peg where you couldn't fish in the match because there were a drain running in. And when it had flooded, it must have run in. It were all sand. You could see the bottom. And Fuji fished bloodworm. Long pole and bloodworm, and had about 2.5 kilos. And he won the section. Anyway, I drew that peg. So, and then tried to catch some perch. I fed out 14 metres and it was never on. Weren't catch. Well, I could catch, but very little. So I decided to go out, and I was struggling. But then it started to get better and better and better. And then I got a carp about £3 near the end. Well, it was at the end of the match. And I thought, there's only a few minutes go. So I picked another rig.
So you landed it? You got it?
Oh, I got it.
Mega.
And then I put another rig on with a 12s, 3 maggots, thinking you'd catch another carp. Went in and I got one. And there were ropes in where the bastard run round.
Never.
Did me.
What broke you?
Well, I got me fast.
Oh, no.
That cost
You
me
had
the
same
world.
points though, didn't you?
Yeah.
So how did you end up then?
I won section easy.
So you had 2 section
Oh,
wins?
5 kilos, yeah, again.
Same in Yugoslavia, wasn't it? You had same points. You got done on weight, didn't you?
No, not in Yugoslavia. No.
Oh, is it Hungary where you were just done on weight?
No, weight.
So you've won your section both days in this
Yeah.
World Champs, but not had enough weight.
Yeah.
And Bob
A
won.
few, not many, about 10 grams, I think.
10 grams. Oh my God.
But that carp, they run me round a bloody rope, a bastard.
So you've up to the fish to win.
Oh, and again, if I'd have gone in with my chain rig and caught a roach, I'd won the match. But then this is what happens.
And how did you feel coming second again? Were you, obviously, it's a great result.
Well, there's nothing for second, is there, Matt? If you're second in a match, there's nothing, only money. Which, I'd sooner win than be second. But then, am I satisfied? You've got to be satisfied. A lot of other handlers have said, bloody hell, Kevin, I'd take that. Just to be there and at least get second.
In a World Championship.
World Championship.
And what about the team? How did the team get on in Hungary?
The team were, we won the team.
I was going to say gold.
Steve, Dennis and Tommy, they seemed to struggle. Steve, he did well second in his section. Steve got second.
Is that Steve Gardner?
Steve Gardner's the best English handler what's never won the World Championship.
Tell me what you think of him. What makes you say that? Obviously,
Good
a lot of people talk massively
good
about
handler, Steve. Good handler, Steve. And straight as a bloody die, Steve. Maybe a bit get on with other people, but to me, no, I had a lot of time for Steve.
Fantastic angler. We should get him on one of these, shouldn't we, and have a natter with him?
A lot of time for Steve, I have.
I'm sure he'll be listening and he'll appreciate that. Definitely. I'd like to sit down with him and have a natter. His name gets mentioned a lot.
Well, everyone
Lovely
I speak
bloke.
to, they all say it's class, don't they?
And a lot of people say exactly what you just said, Kevin. He's the best one to fish for England and not win a World Champs.
I think so.
Amazingly consistent.
The only problem Steve had in a World Championship, he always did better the second day.
Right.
Whether he not quite got it right the first day or not, I don't know. But his results, you can look, he always did better the second day.
I'm gonna ring Steve, get him on. Write it down, Tobes. We'll have that
100%.
one. Steve Gardner, we need to get him on podcast. So second in Yugoslavia, individual. Second in Hungary, individual, and the team won. And you said you've been second 3 times.
Portugal.
Tell me about that. We've got to talk about it.
That was same.
Go on. What happened there? Where were it? What were the venue?
It was Coimbra. What was the river called? Anyway, I'd done well practicing, and it was sticky mag, waddler. And then they were about 4 or 5 foot deep. But then they said they were going to raise the river level for the match, which they did.
What, the night before?
And it absolutely pissed down on the day before. And Dick says, this river, I can't see this river being right. Well, we got there and they brought the level up. And it weren't in flood or anything, but it were torrential rain, you would think it'd be up. So then we starts off and I won the section. And Clive Branson were in my section, he was second. So then we come to the actual match, and there were myself, Dennis, and Clive Branson in a line.
So this is when it was team match one day.
This is the individual match the day after.
How did team do, Kevin? Can you remember?
We won it.
So you've already won team world
We won it.
champs.
Yep.
You just skips over it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, we won that world champ.
Not
So
easy.
yeah. So you've won world champs this first day as a team and individual second day.
Right.
Got you.
So then starts off on there. I'm on my way to winning it. Waddler and we're catching Barble. And there's only a few minutes to go, and I get one a bit bigger. So I try and get it up, and he didn't. And the bastard got me fast at side.
Snagged you up.
Lost me float. Snapped at me float.
Oh no.
Now, I'd only got a light rig on a fishing, probably about a 5 gram float. And it snapped where I'd shotted it, either side shots. Couldn't get it off. Anyway, then I had going with this light float. It was only about 5 minutes ago and that with that, and I lost it with a few grams.
Second again.
Second.
And who won that year?
Clive Branson.
Oh my
Next but
God.
one. The thing were, I walked up 10 pegs with my fish, put them on the scales. Dennis walked up. He didn't put them on the scales, he put his fish in the water first. So left them in the water a minute or so before he put them on the scales. So Clive did the same. And then that's it, 10 grams.
10 grams.
Dick went mad.
Did he? Go on. What happened with Dick? Obviously, he's manager at the time.
Dennis, he said, you've probably cost Kevin World Championship there.
What, by showing Clive how to keep
Well,
him
it
wet?
weren't a matter of that, Dennis. I mean, in all fairness, you've walked 10 pegs with your fish, they're drying out. It's not like somebody pulling the net out and putting them out scales.
No.
Well, there were centres where they had scales. So you had to carry your fish up to there.
It's frustrating now because it probably will have made a difference, won't
Dick says, whether it made a difference, I
10
don't
grams,
know.
third of an ounce.
Yeah, it's
He said, I
nothing.
don't know whether it made any difference or not. But anyway, that happened. But apart from that, the match were there for the taking. It was just the bastard got me stuck and that cost me the match. So that's another thing. And I thought, if I win it, I think I'll call it today because it was getting bloody hard. We working. Don't forget, Matt, I used to work then 7 days a week. And that was the time off I had. And then we're getting tired. And I were all right on my peg. And I'm still good on my peg now. I'm not as quick as I were, but it's preparation. And when you're on about packing up, I can be the first in the match, but I'll be definitely the last back up. Bloody hopeless.
You know, during all this time, Kevin, when you're fishing for England and you're clearly competing at the highest possible level, what were you like with your prep? Were you someone who spent a lot of time tying hooks, tying rigs and stuff?
I'd make sure things were right. And that's when it was getting harder then. Getting, as you get older, man, you ain't got the energy.
Do you still do plenty of prep now in your fishing?
Well, make sure everything's right. My tassels now is better than it's ever been.
Really?
More, It were always a mess, they said, my box. But then, no,
you can sit
everything.
there with a straight face.
Go on, Rod.
It's like, I've sent you the pictures, he's like a tramp.
Everything
Honestly.
now is really what it should be.
But did you used to be a bit rough and ready, or?
It made a difference.
Well, when you
years ago.
top off a waggler.
I fancy that. Barting someone top of waggler.
He says, now it's right. He said, it's too big. Now it's right. Fish with that. It was right.
Natural angler, isn't he?
Don't
Completely
worry
natural.
about that. They most natural, yeah.
I still want to talk a little bit about fishing for England. And
Yes.
obviously we've touched on the close calls, the near misses, amazing stories, Kevin. Talk to me about winning the World Championship there. Where was it and what were that week like? How did you do it?
Well, what happened was the venue were Newry Canal. So prior to it, 12 months, I decided to go and have a week on it. And this is after the World Championship had been fished. And it was possibly October.
Mm.
And I said, right, asked about it. Where is good and where is not so good. And they used fish matches on it. And where it weren't so good, I went, fish bloodworm, and had double figures.
And this is obviously in Ireland, this,
Yes.
isn't it? So this is, you get back from your World Champs and you went over to Ireland to practice for the
Practice.
year after.
The year after the World Championships, before the match was being fished at Newry,
Mm.
I thought, I'll go and give it a go. So I had about 5 sessions on it. And it was good. Good fishing. You know, catching quite a lot of fish, and 3-4 ounce fish.
Mm.
And all skimmers, they were at roach. A few perch, but not many. So then the actual match come up. In May, Stan Smith had a match to try it out. So obviously we went, and Alan McAtee won it. In fact, he were next to me, and I couldn't catch so much, and I'm fishing exactly the same. And Alan won it. Then after the match, I just got my tattle, my pole, just went and sat on his peg, and it was just same, started to catch. And for some, we fed it the same. So then come the actual practice, and it was good practicing. We're catching double figures, and we kept moving up different. And the match were being fished facing the roadside because the road were quite busy. So we used to go across in a boat.
Hmm.
And anyway, it were all right. So then come the day of the match, I drew, don't know exactly where I were, and had a good catch roach and skimmers, and had 6 kilo top weight.
So this is the World Champs.
Yes,
So you won the match.
the day before, the team match.
So you won the team match, yeah.
And then come the actual individual. So obviously, that's the way the system worked then. You've got to get in the first 4 to get in the final, which we fished the day after. So anyway, we fished higher up than we were in the match, and I drew 3 pegs from the end. When we fished these pegs, anyway, I drew this peg and started off, and I thought, I'm not going to put as much stuff in today. I'll just put, just an odd little ball in and just try to build it up. So instead of putting some balls in, I didn't. Just put 2 or 3 little nuggets in. And I couldn't catch. And it was rock hard. And by this time, hour and a half gone, I'm pissed off. And Stan Smith's watching me, and I said, I've drawn here. I said, I've done well on it. I said, and look, it's fishing like this. And Stan says to me, they'll come. I thought. And then the fellow on the end caught. And then the lad next to him, which were Michael Fitzpatrick from Ireland, he caught. And then I caught, and it was slow. And then the last 20 minutes just exploded when I chucked ropes. And I had no skimmers. So I weighed in, and 820 grams I had. They said, Alan says, McAtee, there were nobody allowed on the bank. And Alan McAtee said, well, I think you've won it. Let's wait till the fat lady sings. So when all the results were in, anyway, I'd won it.
Wow.
And there again, where I've been unlucky in some matches, I was lucky in that match. If they hadn't to come on at the end, I'd have had nothing.
820 grams, won the world championship.
You wouldn't think you win a bloody pub club match with that, let alone
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Absolutely.
What a great story.
And
how did it feel, Kevin? Obviously, you've had all these near misses, and you're fishing for your country.
Well, I had near misses after that.
Right.
I had only one near miss before that. But then I thought, well, without saying I expected to win. I mean, that's a bit big-headed. I didn't expect to win, but I was confident I could win. I had confidence I could win. And with the practice and that, and we're doing well the day before, I thought, right, everything I'm doing is right. I've got it right. Well, then that happened. But then, luckily, I came through. And at the night, the reception and all like this were carried on, and getting plenty of attention. And I didn't have much drink, didn't have many drinks. And it got very late. When it finished up, there was Stan Smith and myself left, the only two, and it must have been 4 o'clock in the morning.
He's the manager.
Stan, manager.
Yeah.
So I said to Stan, are we just having one last drink, Stan? And Stan had have quite a lot of drink, but he was a guy what could take drink, Stan. I would imagine he'd a few scotches. So I says, what do you want? He said, I'll have a red wine. I thought, which were unusual. And I had a pint of Smithwick's. And he said to me, Kevin, he says, this is a very popular win. So I said, why? Well, he says, you're accepted as the best fisherman. Tremendous.
Yeah. That's the proof, though. That's the thing you had to do to prove it, and you did.
Tremendous feeling that when Stan said that. And, well, you didn't get many compliments of Stan. Had more bollockings than everything, especially to me being untidy. And that particular match, when going back to the 7, he rang me up the day after, the night after, and he said, Kevin, you fished bloody well yesterday. And, for somebody say something like that, it's obviously a tremendous feeling.
It's potent. It clearly sticks out for you to sit and tell me that in that detail now.
Bloody hell, it's...
Yeah, you can clearly remember it.
It's a nice feeling.
What was he like, Stan, as a manager, Kevin? Obviously, you've spoke about him a lot, and I've heard a lot about him. How did he manage the team?
Oh, he used to let you get on with it, Stan. And then we'd have a meeting and we'd all just say what we thought.
Mm.
And there were, I think when we first started, everybody shared information. And I think it's always been like that when I've fished. And I've always been like that. You know, I've always felt, don't need to hide anything.
Mm.
If you were capable, there's no point in hiding. You can tell anybody what you want as long as you're confident in what you're doing and you don't need to hide anything.
Mm.
I've always been that way.
Mm.
It's
And I've got to ask you, obviously, that particular win, the Newry Canal, how did the team get on that year?
sorry,
How did the team get on the year you won?
we were second.
So Team Silver, you've won individual.
Holland won it.
Holland.
Holland won it.
What for you to win the team match, as in you were the best weight individually, then the day after you've gone back fishing against the best in the world and won the world championship, you must have had the tactics right. The angler in me wants to ask you, like, what did you feed? How did you feed it? What rigs did you use? Can you remember any of that?
Yes, you do, but don't forget, it's very difficult to tell people this, that, and t'other. And I could only say, well, this is what I did.
Mm.
I wouldn't like tell them what to do, but I'd say, well, if it were me, I'd do this.
Mm.
And hopefully, and that's another good feeling I've always had. If somebody's asked me, how do I fish this, Kevin? I'm going here, and I'll tell them. I'll say, well, if it were me, I'd do this and that. And then the next best thing for me winning a match is that guy saying, hey, Kevin, I did what you said, and I won the match. And it's nice to hear that.
Amazing. I know that there's another little story within the Newry Canal and that particular World Champs. And I'm sure that when we had a chat before, and you said that only a handful of people know about it. But do you want to tell us the story about the little, I don't know whether to describe it as a bribe or someone coming and...
a bribe.
Yeah, obviously. This story fits hand in hand with what you're saying. Are we allowed to talk about it on the podcast?
Of course you are.
Tell us what...
Well, it happened.
Tell us what happened.
It were reported as I'd been offered, whilst I was fishing, to take £1,000 if I blew out. Now, all I can say is, or what I will say is, there was a bookie there. And I never had a bet. I thought, no, I'm not having a bet. And the only time I've ever gambled is on myself. And I thought, no, I'll stiffen it. I'm not having a bet. And this is apparently, it were mentioned. But all I can say is, you'll just have to form your own conclusions. But there were a bookie there.
And
that's all I'm saying.
Right, okay. We'll leave it at that. But thank you for talking about it. Appreciate it. Let's move on from international fishing. We've been talking off camera an awful lot about this, and obviously Rod's massively involved in this side of things as well. But when I hear about Kevin Ashurst, something that I always think about is Ireland. From being a kid, I've read about you fishing there. I've seen pictures of you with big bags of fish. And I think I dare say that you really put Ireland on the map in terms of match fishing. Definitely, with your success over there. How did coming to Ireland come about for you, Kevin? When did you first go? When did you hear about it and think, let's go?
The first time was with, obviously, Ian Eaps. He went to fish the Classic and he won it. And he told me all about it, and I said, well, at that time there were troubles. And no, you'll be all right, Ian, and all this. So I said, right, I'll come. So anyway, I went, and it was the classic.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in the chalets at Killyevlin and fished. And I drew the first day on corner grade. And Ian says, where are you drawing? I says, corner grade. He says, that's all good draw. And I caught £80. I were on one of the deep pegs on corner grade, but a bit lower down were better for roach.
Mm.
And there were another 80 there, higher than mine. But then the actual day was one on the castle wall with Tony Knight. He'd £90 Tony.
Flipping heck, ridiculous weights.
And then we fished Wednesday, a 3-day obviously event. And I drew on Broadmeadow, number 12 peg hour. And it narrows off just higher up than the castle wall. And it was double banked that day. They used to put pegs on Irving's Island.
Never.
It's only 30 yards wide. It's not that wide. And anyway, I started off and everything was all right. And we're catching roach. Then I had a few bream. And in them days, the bream were only a pound, pound and a half. Anyway, I had £112. I didn't win it. I was second. And the lad from Oldham won it on number 1 peg on corner grade. And then come the actual last day, there were Corrigans, which were not, you won't want to draw there.
Not good.
That were double banked and all, but on the Wednesday, Ivan were on the peg and he'd had £60. And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to get some fish.
Ivan Marks.
Ivan, aye.
Wow.
Well, Ivan, yeah, I had a lot of respect for Ivan. Likeable lad, Ivan.
Mm.
And so I gets there and just starts fishing. Just done what I was doing, and I caught fish steady all day. Never went mad, but they never went off all day. Come the end of the match, I had £136.
Jesus.
That's, well, they weighed in pound that day. So I weighed and everything were all right. And lad near me said, you know what? I said, back at the draw, Kevin, and said, well, Ashurst has drawn out of town. He'll know now what it's like out of town. Probably one of these handlers what's no credit for anybody anyway. So he says, you've proved him wrong, Kevin. So anyway, I went back and I'd won it. And the record still stands. Really, there's no record should stand for 40, 45, 46 years. And the winning team that day were myself, Ian Heaps, Bill Reid from Stockport, and a young Tommy Pickering.
Incredible.
And all them 4 handlers have won the Classic.
Wow. And that year, you're not saying it again, but you won the Classic that year, individual.
Yes.
So the first time you ever went to Ireland was on arguably the most renowned event in Ireland, the Classic, 400 pegger, and you won it.
Yes.
With a record weight, £331.
It still stands, yes.
To this day.
Yeah.
That's still the record now. That's phenomenal, isn't it?
Well, yes, you can say that, but don't forget, the fishing's not as good now as it used to be. There were more good pegs them days. Still had to all right, but there were more good pegs.
And is it fair to say that got you hooked on Ireland?
Well, I enjoyed it, and, you know, I enjoyed the people there. Nice people, Northern Ireland people. Very friendly people.
And what went on in Ireland after that? Where did you go from there?
Well, I fished several events that, and did all right, and not in the classic. Won a few sections when there were 25 in a section, and but then I did get in. I did frame, and I've won all the festivals in May, and there were one particular, the Gold Cup.
I heard a lot of people talk about that event.
And so I went, and the river had come up. It had rained heavily, and it were a bit coloured. And Cliff Smart run the event, and he'd put this section in Queen Elizabeth Road, and I drew it on Sunday, and there were 4 matches, and if you won the section, you get in the final.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he had it. So, and I didn't do very well the first day. In fact, I didn't weigh. And I drawed in the middle of it, Queen Elizabeth Road, with a wall across, and it weren't as good. But then I thought, well, if I draw well on here, I'll need some gear on.
Mm.
So I rigged up 10 gram, 3 metre and 4 metre lengths with £10 line, £8 hook length. And I thought, just in case. And I had it. So then there were no match on Monday, and then there were a match on Tuesday. So I drawed a peg a bit further down where there were rushes on both sides and there were more fish. The fish were spawning in the rushes, and it was good.
This was in the Narrows, wasn't it?
And it's only 7 metres wide.
What, the whole river is?
No, there.
You've got
Wow.
2 bays.
There's 2 bays on that. So it was good. And 10 grams, 4 foot deep, plenty pace on it, colour in it, plenty fish there. And then, after about 3.5 hours, they slowed right off, and I finished up with running line. So I caught a few. 89 kilo I had.
Oh, it's a few, all right, isn't it? 89
89 kilo.
Roach, Kevin, all
All
roach.
roach, and they were fish then maybe 7, 8 to a kilo.
That is mental
Well,
fishing.
They weren't as big then, although there were a lot more.
Mm.
Then the day after, I was on corner grade, and there were colour on it and that, and fished a big float, and I had 49 kilo. Had some roach and bream, and I won that section. And then come the actual final, Cliff Smart put 20 pegs in from the bridge to the wide, and that must have only been 120 yards long, 150 yards long, that length, to put 20 pegs in, and 1 or 2 were created, on top of one another, which they was. And I do the same peg.
And what did you end up with?
That was the good news. The bad news is we were 8 yards apart.
So there's a load of you packed in there.
So I couldn't put a rod and line up. So I rigged 3 metres up, which I'd caught the fish on. Same hook as well. I'd still got the same hook on. A 10's model perfect with a barb nicked off. And I rigged 6 metres up. So then kicks off, and it was really good. And I thought, I'm going to get a big weight here today. And at that time, if I caught fish, I used to grab them, and my hands were all cut and red with the points of the hooks going in. And what I did, put a film of super glue over. Obviously, you'd have to leave it stretched for 10 minutes, and then it were all like crinkly. But as I grabbed the fish, the point weren't penetrating. You could get sore hands with them, and you could maybe get an infection from it. However, that did the trick. And as I was lifting them out, I was grabbing them, and everything was good. And then all at once, slowed right up. I thought, bloody hell. So then I went to 6 metres. Well, then 6 metres, I was nearly going to the next man.
Mm.
So my float sometimes is under his pole. Anyway, I finished up 93 kilo.
Ridiculous weight.
And they were playing bloody hell about them pegs being that short, but yet the lowest weight in the match had 20 kilo.
Incredible sport. It is.
Chris Diamond with the M peg going to the wide. Chris was second with 77 kilo. Ian were 2 pegs below me. He'd 66 kilo. We were for second and third.
Amazing.
It's absolutely tremendous match.
And that's the Gold Cup.
That was the Gold Cup.
So it's another big, massive event in Ireland. That.
there's a lot, isn't
And
it?
there were, but then there were a lot of fish because there were rushes either side, and there were a lot of fish there.
What to catch them weights though, Kevin? I mean, you reel them off like it's nothing. 60 kilo here, 130 pound here, 90 odd, 80 odd kilo. Like what? Again, I've said it a few times on this podcast already, but you must have had certain things that you could do better than other people, and you knew how to catch them. What were the things that made you better at catching them big weights?
I don't know.
You didn't have a secret ground bait or anything like that?
I don't know.
You made rigs up then, didn't you?
I
Other
just,
people didn't make rigs up then.
I just did what I thought, and luckily, lots of times I'd got it right. Didn't get it right all the time, but a lot of time I got it right. And, well, as I'd explain, when I've left a peg, I've always felt, could I have caught more? And maybe that probably why I've been so successful.
How did you feed? How did you used to, to catch 93 kilo a roach? How did you used to feed to catch that kind of weight?
Well, you don't forget them days. Whether we'd have needed it or not, I don't know. We'd have a maggot tray outside of me with about a couple of stone of ground bait mixed up, maybe several pints of casters, and 2 and 3 maggots on a big hook. They didn't need much catching as long as you had the right gear. I mean, that's the most important thing, having the right gear. If you're fishing with the wrong gear on a good peg, you're only going to catch half as much as what you can do. And actually, the day after that match, they had a knock-up on it. And a lad who worked for me, Nick, from Lee, Nick Horrocks, he was there, and he borrowed my tattle and he fished the day after. And Bill Bywater won it, 66 kilo, a little knock-up. There were about 10 of them. And Nick had 50 odd kilo. And he did a bit of fishing, but it was some fishing there. But then obviously, with catching a lot of fish the day after weren't as good. But then they were more spread out. But it's been good since. But then they've put them 20 and 30 yards apart. But it's no longer like it used to be. Everywhere you look, there were fish spawning in the rushes. There's not as many fish now.
Have you, obviously you still go to Ireland now, don't you?
Yes. Well, I did last year, fish the Classic, but I'm all right on my peg. But it's getting there, and, stones can be slippy. If I slip and break something, that's me finished. So I have to watch. But I fished the Classic last year, and I went with my grandson, our Ben. That's Keith's lad.
Amazing.
But he's 6'5", our Ben now.
This is the lad who we're talking about, carrying tackle, getting you set. Are you going to come this year, Kevin? Do you think?
Well, hopefully, if I'm feeling like I feel now, yes, I'll come. I can't come without him.
Well, I'll carry a tackle for you if you're anywhere near me.
And last time I went, a fella says to me, I drawed on the wall at Bow Island. And this fellow here, he got me on the wrong Bow Island. So then Gary Drew says, you're on the wrong island, you're on that first one. Gets there and I'm on the wall where they don't very often put it in. Fella says to me, oh, we're on that corner yesterday. The nymphish didn't come on till late. He says, the fellow on your peg never had a bite. I said, Devo. He said, honestly, Kevin, he said, I'm sorry to tell you, he never had a bite. But he said he packed up 10 minutes. I thought, I bloody would do if he not had 4 hours, 50 minutes, not had a bite. And I'm watching him catch them.
I know, true on the same section.
And I kept walking and leaving it in and walking and pulling back and looking at the bait, not touched. 2 hours gone. Then I went back and I thought, I threw in again and I was just going to get up and have another walk. And tip went. I finished up catching just short of 10 kilo.
Brilliant.
It was good.
What were the hybrids or roach?
Roach.
Great
Roach,
fishing.
It was,
How's it compare now, Kevin? Obviously, first time I ever went to Ireland was last year. And I listened to your stories of this. And I can't help but think it must have been better. There must have been more
it
fish.
were better then. But really now, at that time of the year, it's better. It's best fish in the world. Because the quality of the fish, you know, them roach, pound roach, common, £1.5 roach, 2-3 pound hybrids. You can't get that anywhere. And pleasure fishing, it's fantastic at that time of the year. But then, obviously, if you draw well, it'll break your. If you draw bad, it'll break your out, destroy you. If you draw well, you're in with a chance because there ain't that many winning pegs, unfortunately. And this is why it's not as good now as it used to be. But the fish are bigger, and if you can get on a good peg, there's nowhere else like it. Nor as I know, nowhere else like
it's
it.
It's different though, isn't it? You draw on the lock, and
you never know. You never know on that lock.
They can blank and blank and blank and blank, and the wind blows, a summit changes. Well, loads of times people have not gone to the peg.
I tell them you've got to go, and sometimes they'll say to me,
"What Richie Hoskins in the Classic didn't go to Bow Island. The wind had turned round, blowing in, and he's like, can't be bothered, bit of traffic, everything else, I'm not going." He'd have won the Classic, and he didn't go. Everyone on that section caught between 20 and 30 kilo.
I don't want you to go into too much detail, right? Because I'm going to do a podcast with you separate. But tell us a little bit about the time. I'm sat here and I've got 2 Classic winners in front of me. Tell me about when you won Classic, because people will love that story. That's exactly what you're just talking about.
Well, it's funny really, because the first, so you have the Bobby Smithers Memorial, don't you, on the Sunday, which is a massive match. So anyway, that's different. We spoke about that before. But so on the Monday, the draw, it was always in the Forum, but this year it was at Killyevon. Remember when it was at Killy? So I don't know, but I'm terrible, me, with the broth in Ireland. And that comes first. The holiday comes first. The fishing is just, well, it's something doing the day for me. So me and my dad, we rocks up, and I'm like, I could do without this. And I've gone, and we are literally, they're waiting for us. We were so late, and I've just gone in, this big wooden box that they have with an hole when you put it on there. And Michael Fitzpatrick was there, and Eddie McGovern and that. They're like, oh yeah, typical Rod, you. Puts my hand in, opens it up, E7. Ely 7, my dad's gone. He said, that's where I was yesterday. He said, everyone blanked. It was like made up, my dad. And we're going halves. And I'm like, oh, God. He says, well, you've got to go. And I'm really, honestly, Matt, I'm that close off not going first day of the Classic. You've got to go. You take the van, drop me off. Right. He says, the good news is, he says, I was on it yesterday. He says, and it's a bit of a walk. He said, I fired all my ground bait, and at the end, So if there's anything going to be in that area, it'll be on your peg. So you might win your section, whatever. So anyway, I went, chucks in, got 33 bream in 33 chucks. True story. They were all a kilo piece then, weren't they? And I weighed in 33. He can remember weights, I can't. It's 33 kilo something. I was like, oh, won the first day. So it was 500 quid for winning the day. It was 500 quid super pool. And you have a bet with John Shellam, who we were talking about before. 1,000 quid off the book. So I've won $2,000.
Just for winning a match?
For winning that day. I've got week sorted. Happy days. Proper broth money now. So my dad's... But the funny story was, my dad's phoning me. No answer. Next minute, gets a signal. So it comes and goes at Ely, doesn't it? The phone signal. He's like, you're at the house, aren't you? I says, no. I said, I'm sat on my peg. He said, well, you've got a signal. He said, and I know there's no signal at Ely. You're definitely in there. I said, I'm not, Dad. I said, I've got 33. He would not believe me. I swear, on his grave, on my little boy's life, he would not believe me until the results come out at night. I even showed him my weigh thing. He went, fill that in yourself. The results come out and he went, well done. This is at about 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, celebrate with me. I've won the day. He went, you're full of shit. And I had, honestly. And the next day, I was late again. I thought, so told you I was superstitious. Got to do same again. Went in last again. There's about 3 pegs left, Matt. And I've drawn Ely 19, which is a great peg. It's the bench peg. It's steady. It's not a winner, but it's steady.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Hemingway won the section off peg 15. Better down there. And he caught like 18, 19 kilo. I caught 12. So, all right, job done. Nice. The peg I left in the app was Ely 12. Peg 11 had 30 odd kilo. Peg 13 had 40 kilo. And I'd have been on 12, which is the best peg on there.
So you'd had a silly weight.
Oh, 40 odd, definitely. I'd have won the match, and I would. So then you go to the Friday and
So
the
would
last
that have been
day.
another $2,000?
Oh, yeah.
What?
So then you go into the Friday, and I've gone like this. And I always remember it. I'm like, I did it with my right hand, and I went in like that. I thought and I remember doing a little press. Come on, just give me any peg. Gone in. H25.
Airport.
Oh, no. So I've looked. So they have the results up. You've fished it now, so they have the results up from the previous 2 days. And there it is, H25, Monday. Not only did 25 blank, all that section blanked. So it's right round. Airport's in a straight line. You've got the point, and then comes it goes round a big bay. And then you've got 21 to 25, which is facing Trory. Pegs 20 odds, aren't they? Up there. I'm like, oh my God, this is horrendous. Wednesday, blanked everyone. They've drawn out for the... So I got there, my dad's with me and that, and Oggy was with me, and they've carried my gear down. I said, if your name's on it, your name's on it. I've looked in the distance, there's this little brown patch. It's damp everywhere. I thought, well, I'll chuck in that brown patch. Didn't know what it was, just looked a bit different. So threw in it. Had a bite, first chuck, missed it. Second chuck, went in, had a bite, swung an hybrid in that big. Third chuck, went down, caught a bream, picked up my big rod, got 59 kilos, 350, and won that day. Another $2,000. And then I thought, surely I've won it overall. But I was already winning and won the day.
So you won it?
But imagine if anyone else in that match had drawn that peg. 1, would they have gone? And 2, if they had, they'd have won classic. But I was last in the app. Your name's on it, isn't it?
What a great story, though.
He knocked a draw last. He won the Gold Cup. And this fella said he'd no right drawing last. He had the last peg in the bank.
What, on Gold Cup?
And
So
he
you won
won
Gold
it.
Cup as well?
He won it.
Yeah,
Of course he'd won it.
kilo, yeah.
But then he shouldn't have done that.
Why?
Well, he should have been drawn like anybody else. So.
I said, someone's got to have last
I
peg.
said,
I said, I'll
hang
just
on.
have the last
Hey.
one.
Matt, I said, hang on. Yeah, you see. No
keep-
credit for anybody, only. shouldn't have done that. What can you do? Is that last peg it bloody bag? Everybody else can draw it,
Of course they can.
but he shouldn't have done. He should have drawn before.
You're going to get that when you win, aren't you?
Yeah.
Matt Brown says to me, he said, you've two choices. If you're ever running matches, right, he said, you either go in first and get someone to draw it for you, or have last peg. So I thought, well, it's always worked well for me going in late. I thought, right, I'll just have last peg now. In every match I go in Ireland, I'll just have that last one.
Do you still do it now, Rod?
Yeah, I always have last peg, yeah. Yeah, he makes me go early.
He can.
Who?
Sean
and Cam.
Come on, we like going in about 3/4. I'm like, grow up. But he's coming round to my way of thinking now.
There's nobody, when he asks last peg, if he's anything to do with match, nobody can say out.
No, of course there's not.
So he's right what he does.
Have you got any drawing superstitions, Kevin?
No.
You go in wherever you are.
No, I don't. I don't look at things in detail.
Just go for it.
I just do things.
Amazing. Well, like I said, Rod, I don't want to talk to you too much about fishing because I want to get you sat opposite me and do a different show just with you on your own. And you're not getting away from it now because I've said it on here. So you've got to do it.
Good luck.
We'll get him, Tobe. We'll get him. One area, while we're talking about a bit of superstition and that kind of thing, something me and you spoke about before, Kevin, were like a bit of controversy in match fishing and some of the things that you've seen or witnessed over the years. I mean, I've got a few things written down in front of me. What sticks out in your mind in all them years of match fishing?
Well, I've won 3 matches. 2 matches I won when I've drawn a peg. Well, there's been somebody on it. When I fished this particular match, Tattenbury it were, this lad from Wolverhampton were running it, and I'd stayed overnight. I'd done for Rodney Calder. He said, will you present prizes for our club? I said, yes. So I went, and I were fishing this match day after, and we were just ready for bed, and then there were 1 or 2 handlers from down south were fishing. They come practicing for a match on the Trent. So I started talking, have a drink, Kevin. I said, so I said, okay, I'll have one, which I did. And that was that. But then we went to bed. And I booked this early morning call, never got the call. Woke up, I said, bloody hell, we're late. Fair lady says, I said, we've not time to have a drink. So I went there, Attenborough gravel pits. It were Attenborough. Gets to the draw, there's about 2 or 3 left behind me. So we're last in bag. We'd not had a drink or anything. So it goes in the bag. The lad says, you're top end on the gravels. He said, it's all right there. So I went to booking, somebody on it. So I went back to him, and all the pegs had gone then. So he says to me, he said, number 4 peg's empty. That were the other end. That were like with the gravel pits behind you. So he said, you can drive to there, it's all right and all that. So, I have been there. Nowhere else to fish. Gets there and I walk into my peg. Next thing, there's a fella walking down. I thought, oh no. So I says, are you here? He said, yes. I said, well, you've not booked in. He said, I've drawn it. I said, no, but really, you're not in match if you've not booked. He says, Kevin, I've drawn it. So what can I say? Chat were genuine. He says, but there's an empty peg a bit further up. I said, are you sure? He said, definitely. So I said, right. He said, and you can drive down there. There's a bit of a gap. You'll drive down. It's narrow. So anyway, I drove down and she's at it. I'm stuck here. I said, well, get us a drink and a sandwich. She said, I have to back up all the way. I said, well, back up. So I gets on my peg, all in. Next thing, throw some bait in. Peg above me, chub. Rigging up.
Are you in a bad mood?
Missed a bloody ring. Baiting. Another chub. I thought, bloody hell. Anyway, I went in. Everything worked out well. Finished up with a dozen or so chub, a bream 4 pound, and 3 big hybrids.
What on waggler stick float?
Stick float. 20 odd pound. Went back. I said, John, I said, that number 4 peg, there was somebody had drawn it. I said, I've been on this peg. So what could I do? I couldn't do anything. He said, well, and every peg had gone. Apart from what had happened, there was something bloody going on. I don't know. But anyway, that was that. So I won the match. Then there were a match on the 7, and it was a float-only match.
So
And
they let you keep your money. You'd won match.
well,
that were it.
Oh, well, I won the match.
But-
Well, there was nothing said. What could anybody say?
Well, that's like the 3rd peg that you've tried to fish.
Yeah,
Drawn
well, I
a peg.
drawed it. My peg I'd drawed were on these gravels, and there was second come off that with big teams round it. I don't know where. But then anyway, what could I do?
How many's on that match, Kevin? How many would there
There'd be
be?
100 in it.
What's chances of that?
Well,
It's
this
just
is another thing.
yeah.
Anyway, this there was a match on the 7.
Got his butty.
Yeah, did you get your butty off? Your lovely
Oh,
lady.
I she come with a drink. How I.
No scratches on car, no.
No, everything was all right. So anyway, that was that. But then there were a match on 7, and Stan Lewis used to run it, and it were supposed to be the businessman's match, and it were 25 quid a peg, which were, I mean, going back a while, which were a fair entrance fee, that. So he's put the Littleton water, that's at Stourport, and Birmingham stretch, which they called it the Mucky Meadows. Well, Frank and I drew there. So anyway, we walked down to the pegs, and I get down, and it's a float-only match. And I couldn't believe it. I can't get down. There's a tree here. I thought, well, how can I fish this? It were a feeder peg, that's all I could. And obviously, it were a float match. So Frank had drawn a reasonable looking peg, so I said, oh, I'm going back. I said, I'll tell him I'll get my money back, Frank. I've not, and I'll pleasure fish outside at shop. And then I'll pick you up after the match. So anyway, I goes there, and Stan Lewis is there. I said, I can't fish that peg, Stan. He says, well, I said, I can't, it's a steep bank, I can't get down, and there's a tree right there. I can't go, and I just hang on outside with the float, and I said, I can't fish it, Stan. I said, I'm not having it. So he says, well, he says, there's 3 pegs left. Well, there shouldn't have been, because he said they booked in and not turned up, because normally all the pegs had gone. So I draws this peg, so he said, you're at top of the Littleton water, Stourport, so gets to my peg, and nice even run, starts fishing. Had a belting day, 20 odd pound, not big fish, roach and dace. Goes back, and I won the match. And Paul Court was second, and I told Paul, I said, look, Paul, I said, I didn't draw that peg at first. I drew a peg and I couldn't fish it, so I went back. So I said, if anybody said anything, I'm telling you now. So that was that. So he said, well, what could you do? You couldn't. Fair enough. The peg shouldn't have been in. And after he said, somebody had altered pegs, I don't think they had. I think that pegger out had pegged out it bloody dark. I don't think they'd alter. Nobody had shifted pegs. So that was that I'd won the match, and it was quite a good match. But then there were one match, and really, looking back, and it's really bothered me. There was this match at Winthorpe, and I drew a peg, 118 peg it were,
This is on Trent.
at Winthorpe.
Yeah.
Winthorpe Racket were. Now, this were a workshop match, and normally all these matches, they were tight. They were more or less sold out every match. There were no, there were no empty pegs, and if they put so many in a match, they'd probably sell them tickets. So anyway, I gets there, and he gets down, 118. And it were a peg match where you draw and put back, so on your book in. But then scales come up, and I had £13 actually this match, but I had an empty peg below me. So lad walked up with sheet and scales, and he says, "You won 19, Kevin." I said, "I draw 118. He said, "Well, there's 119 on here." I said, "Well, I'm sure I've drawn 118. So anyway, I said, "Well, I'll weigh in, put it down, and I'll say." So I went back, I says to Gerald Rollison, who were running it, he was secretary of workshop, Gerald. I said, "This has happened, Gerald." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." He said, "Are you 100% sure, Kevin?" I said, No, I said, "I'm not." I said, "I'll only be 100% sure, Gerald, if I had the ticket in my hand." I said, "But I think I did." So I says, "Well," I said, "if anybody objects to it," I said, "don't matter, I'll accept it." So anyway, he read out the winners, and then he says, "Me, any objections?" Nobody said out. "Is there any objections?" he asked twice. So he paid me out, and I told one or two, like, I said, "I'm bloody sure I were on that peg." Well, this were maybe about November. Then at end of the year, my dad used about packets what we'd won, because me and him shared. And he says, he brought it up, he says, "This match," he said, "at workshop," he says, "Are you bloody sure you were on that peg?" I said, "I think so, Dad." And I thought, I'll ring Gerald up. So I rang him up. I said, "Hey, Gerald," I said, "I'm not happy with this." I said, "I don't want anything I'm not entitled to." I said, "So I think, best thing to do is you can have these packets back." He said, "Look, Kevin," he said, "no, you can't do that." He said, "I asked." And really, I wish I'd have bloody said, I mean, because I'm not like that.
No,
And
of course
I
you're
thought, no, I wish I'd never accepted it. I wish I'd just have said, it's wrong peg. And I've thought about it since, and I don't think I did anything wrong, but no, I've not really been happy with it, and that's controversy. And I mean, all these years of me fishing, there's going to be some bloody, and I'm not a stroke puller, I don't pull strokes, and I've seen strokes pulled, and I don't like it. But then my idea is, and I've said this to Gary Worley, there were an handler, an international handler, with a stone in his net, but it weren't a stone, it was like a flat tile, and you would think it could be a skimmer or an hybrid, and I didn't see it. Well, this bloke weighed in, he said, "Hey, there's a rock in the net here," but it weren't a rock. And I told Gary about it, and then I thought, no, he'll not do it like that. But then it come to something dropped up, and he think he did it again. And Gary says to me, I said, I bloody did that deliberate. That's when I felt he'd done it deliberate. And Gary's idea were, is that the first time he's done it? No, it's not.
Gary
But
caught him, didn't he?
I said to Gary, look, Gary, I can understand somebody who's skint try to pull a stroke, because anybody skint will do desperate things. Gary's idea said, he shouldn't bloody do it. He said, I have no money, I won't bloody do it.
And did he pull him up on it? Did he?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was with him.
Roddy said, like, I don't know that. That's what Gary
They
told
were like
me.
this big. They were like, they looked like an hybrid.
You would have thought it was
on
an
a
hybrid
skimmer.
a brown sandstone.
Hey,
but
the bit a pound.
Who needs to do that, though? Have an extra pound in your net?
We caught it. You heard it. A lot of fish in the net. A lot of fish.
when he put them on the scales,
Yeah,
Matt, I packed up early. And it were a Gold Cup match. And I'd drawed where it on Loch Breast, and where I'd drawed, I went next to Peg, and it weren't so good. You had to be on the first pegs. Fellow end packed up. Couldn't catch. Fellow next to me packed up, and I couldn't catch. And then all at once they come on. And I finished up with 9 kilo, and I only took a tip rod on my box, no gear. So I packed up early, and he were weighing in, this guy, but then this Billy Gilmore said, well, I'll weigh in, and he said, such a body's catch. I said, I know, but he's qualified. And when he put them on, I thought, bloody hell, he's put them fish on rough. And then Billy saw it, he said, hey, there's a rock in here. I never saw it. I mean, I don't think anybody would do it like that. But then I'm one of these, well, suddenly pull a bloody stroke up front of me, I wouldn't see it. Because, I don't think like that. But
you trust people.
Well,
Doesn't it make you wonder how much of it goes off that we miss? Because I'm so blasé on bank, and like you said, Kevin, you trust everyone.
No.
I'd really like to think a lot of it doesn't go off.
Well, Kevin, we were talking, you won't believe it, we were talking about it, me and Gary, and I even remember the peg he was on, which is unlike me, but he was on Ely 16. Decent area, it's a few years ago. And we were talking about it, me and Gary, and then we went up, and you heard it, and it was like, you could hear him, jing, 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 in the middle of all, but like he said, rough. Pulled him out, and he's like doing it quick, and straight in the bag. But you heard the noise. And Gary being Gary,
This is Gary Worley,
a
isn't it?
spade's a spade with him. He's like, hang on, I want to check that. And he's opened it up, and he's in. He's like, yeah, what's this?
And what did bloke do whose net it were in?
So, what can you do when you... He said, I don't know. Have you ever been in that position?
Getting
innit?
back to that controversy, when I said about that, well, then it worked for me in something I did. I fished this classic the day or on Sligo, away from the good pegs, but it was no good anyway, it fished bad. Well, only 5 kilo. Or 4 kilo. But then on the Wednesday I do a dolly, 14 peg on Ely, which it's not one all the time, but when it's on, it can win, and it usually wins with 20 odd kilo. I've do it twice and won twice on it. Well, I've do it 5 times. I've caught out on it 3 times, but I've won twice off it. Anyway, I drew it in the classic, so there a bloody German on next peg throwing up to me. Anyway, I finished up with 26 kilo, and he took a few fish off me, and I caught more. But then I weighed in 3 ways, and there are kidot scales, and really he shouldn't have been weighing in. And he's reckoning up on a phone. And normally, when I I'll leave it to the scales man. I'm not one of these or another ounce. No, I'm not like that. I'll leave it. And which I had done, and I looked at his reckoning up, and I thought, he says 27 kilos something. And I looked, and I thought, no, I said, not 27 there, lad. They're only 26. But I won the match.
Mm.
And then I fished the Friday, and I drove out airport. And it hadn't been fishing that good. But anyway, I thought, that's a good draw. And I had 18 kilo. And I were second, and I lost it with 300 grams. And I fucking know now, if the winner had have been on that peg I were on, he'd have wanted some more, not less.
Mm.
So instead of wanting 27 kilo, he'd have fucking wanted 28.
Mm.
And I thought, what a bloody mistake looking at that.
That's because you're winning the classic, having a look at...
Well, I'd not won it because I'd not got that weight.
Mm.
But then, I think...
There's a lot of people would have won it, though, because they wouldn't have
I
owned up to
I
it.
wish I'd never have done that.
There's a lot of people would have looked
And I know,
at it.
I know it's not right, Matt, but
Mm.
honestly, I thought, what a bloody miss, because the man who won it's biggest fucking wrong gun who goes fishing.
You should tell us what you really think.
Thought you were going to behave. You know, it's
But
your fault, Matt. You told
all
him
I'll-
don't hang back.
All I'll say though, Kevin, is like you said, you didn't have the weight of fish to actually win it, so,
So I didn't win it.
you can sleep at night and think I'm fair
But
as
if I
I can
had
be.
to look, I wouldn't have known, would I?
Of course you wouldn't,
And I'd have won it.
but that's why you're a proper bloke and trustworthy.
Well, but
and
luckily, I looked,
Mm.
and I wouldn't have done normally. If he'd have been like, say, he'd have been weighing in, I'd have never looked.
But he'd have probably got weights right.
But it were only, but then with him, and I just
Mm.
looked over, and Paul Clark was there from Leeds, and he really didn't see it.
Mm.
But anyway, that was that, so...
Like you said though, with the amount that you guys go fishing and the years you've done it in big matches, Kevin, there's going to be incidents. You're going to have seen interesting, weird, good and bad stuff happen, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
That's 70 euro match fishing.
There you go. And still absolutely wazzing it most of the time now.
When did you win on Mersey? Last week? Week before?
Yes, I did. When we had the talk,
Yeah.
I went to Mersey, and it weren't a good day, but then it were hard, and I really enjoyed it. I had £4.5,
Mm.
won the match, but it were a day when there were tip weights, but I caught on the pole, and there's 4.5 gram float. The peg were only 7 foot. They were running a bit of pace on it, and it were one of them where overshot it and crept it through, missed a few and bumped a few, but they were smallish fish, and won the match. And really, I enjoyed that day.
Lovely days fishing.
£4.5, and really enjoyed it.
Do you still go fishing every day you can now, Kevin?
No, I don't. It's not like I did. I used to go nearly every day, and in winter, well, obviously, and sometimes I've come home from work on 150 yards from where I live. We're facing Lee Canal, and I've come home, and my dad says, "You're not bloody going now, are you?" And I walk up over a concrete bridge and facing my house, and my dad used to say, "It'll be bloody dark in 2 hours." And I bloody walk up and go fishing in winter after I've been working. We were finished early.
Mm.
It's not 70 years of match fishing. It's 70 years of winning matches, isn't it? Your first one was what, 12?
Oh, 14.
14, and then, what is it, 84 now?
85.
85.
So 70 years of winning matches.
Inspirational, Kevin, honestly. Really is. I know you don't...
Freaky, innit?
No, you don't sit there and say it yourself, but for someone like me to be able to sit in front of you and talk about it, honestly, it's amazing. I said it at the start, it's an honour to be able to sit here and have a natter with you about it, some stories, and I feel like I sit here listening to you, and I feel like I'm sat on your side tray, fishing matches with you, watching you pick bait out your tray, and, you know, it's magical. It is, definitely. I've got a few more things I want to ask you about, obviously off the back of us having that natter before. You said one of your pet hates in fishing. I always ask people what niggles you, what your pet hates in fishing, and you said straight away, you said matches that aren't reported.
Oh, God. No, I didn't like that.
Tell us a little bit about that. You've got a few.
Well, the first match with the Weaver Championship. Now, we fished Weaver for years, and in the early days, sometimes you won't see a netting, really hard. And the Manchester Evening News Weaver Championship, we've been trying to win it, me and my dad. Never won it. I got second. I don't think my dad had ever got in. And then there was this particular match. It went the before 100 in it, but then it went down. And in fact, Roddy's dad used to run it then. Northwich always ran it. And then it went a bit down and the secretary didn't do it. So Malk ran it. So me and Baz, we went work this morning, and Sunday morning as normal. We'd work before we went fishing Sunday. When we got there was my dad and our Keith, that was me, our Keith, my son, and Baz. Anyway, we went, and on Friday we'd been for a bit of a practice, and we'd been with Jack Lloyd. This was a friend of ours. And I went top of the lock at Vale Royal, and my dad was below, and he'd a double figure catch, my dad, pole and caster. He caught some nice roach. Said that was the method. So we goes. Says to Keith, I says, pole and caster, Baz. Baz and my dad drew at top of lock, where I've been and not caught so much. Me and Keith were facing the draw on Hartford Meadows, and we'd get on the car park, walk up a bank, over the bridge, down, facing where we'd drawn. So it starts off pole and caster. 40 minutes, not a bite, I thought. So swap, put a slider on, went down the middle with maggot. I caught £3 in no time. Our Keith's about 8 pegs below me, and I know he's no maggots. So I ran down the bank with some maggots. I says, "What have you had?" He says, 2. I said, "Get up slider in the middle with maggot." So I went back, finished up weighed £11 in. Keith finished up £6 odd. He was second. And he was third in it, second in it. But landlord of this pub where we used to draw in Lee, Jack Bradley. he was second, Jack. Anyway, I won it with one team. Gets back to draw, and Don Bridgewood, he used to do all the reports for the Evening News. He used to put a column in every Monday, the matches, and for the handling papers as well. And I thought, it's funny, Bridgewood's not here. So I says to Malk, I says, "Where's Bridgewood?" He said, "Well, they sponsored it, the Evening News." He said, "They owe me £300 from last year." He said, "I'll put it in." He said, "Put the prizes," and then, so he said, "I've put the money in. I've never got it off them." And every Monday of the Evening News Championship, Weaver Championship, the winner were on the front page. And the winning team were on the back page. It's because it was never reported, and I thought, well, bloody hell. we've been trying to win this match all these years, win it, and then it's not reported.
Chuffing hell.
And, a bit pissed off with
Mm.
that. And
Could imagine.
I
Especially,
didn't like it.
it's a venue you've learned and you want to
Oh,
win
well,
on. And
bloody hell, with my dad, we've been on buzz when I was a kid. Took us longer to get there than what we did fishing. So, but that's how it were. And I didn't like it.
No, I'm not surprised.
And then another time, it were European Championships in Portugal. And Ian and myself were on this lake.
Ian Eaps this again.
Ian, yes.
Yeah.
Tommy were there and, team. And we'd been up Friday, caught some carp, and it were all right. Anyway, there were two sections. One were on a side, which weren't as good, and Ian were on the good side. So Ian had double figures, and I had about 7 kilo on the bad side. But I won the section, and Ian won his section. So he gets back, and then the day after, the second day, we're in the town, and it were a smallish river, maybe something like the Avon at Stretford, and I drew the top section, and it weren't so good, and it was just trickling through about 3 or 4 foot deep, and it was about 14 metres wide. So it starts off, little waddler, everything were right, couldn't catch much. And next but one to his fella fishing a long pole and catching a few, not much. And I thought, they probably want it steady, this. And they were barbel, little barbel. So I put a stick float on and tried to hold it, fished across, over depth, and I started to catch them, little barbel. They're all like 2 ounce, 3 ounce barbel. And I had about 2.5 kilo. Won the section. Gets back, and Tommy, as usual, scrutinising the weights. And that Tommy hadn't done great. They were on small fish lakes, and he says to me, he said, "Hey," he says, "you catch more fish than all section put together." This was the first day, and then he said, "And that's done same again today, more than all section put together." So I'd won it. So he gets back, and the Italian manager says, "How much would it cost to transfer him to the Italian team?" Dick said he's not for sale. When I gets back, comes back, it bloody press a weekend, following week, the report. I weren't even there. There were no mention of me being there, let alone win it.
Never. European champs.
There weren't a lot of teams in it then. There were no Ireland and Scotland weren't in it, and Wales. There were only like continental teams, Germany, France, Italy, Portugal, obviously.
It's still best teams in the world, though, and best anglers in the world you're fishing again.
That many, but anyway, that was that. And then another ball ache were National Handling Exhibition at Birmingham.
NEC, that, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And leading up to it, they decided there'd be a match with Bob Nudd and myself. So it's in Handling Times, big rods drawn at 12 o'clock, a 2-hour match and all this. Big bit of a build-up. So we fish. So I says to Bob, well, I'll bring bait. So we're there outside of one another. So rigged the feeder up, rigged pole up. So went in and feeder, it's a 2-hour match, done about half an hour, 3 parts of an hour. Tip went, caught a roach. Now there'd been 3 matches on it. Nobody had caught a fish on it.
Oh my.
So anyway, I caught this roach. Then that way, it's only about 10. Then I went up pole and I caught a roach on pole. So I had 2 roach. Bob didn't catch.
Even the whole match? You
No, well, we were only 2 hours. Well, I mean, I had only 2 fish, I had only 2 bites. Bob didn't catch. So, week after, that was that, no reporting. And I thought, oh, bloody hell. They've built this up. And then there's no report. And a couple of guys said, hey, Kevin, do you fish that much? I said, what happened? So when I said, well, we wrote, both of them were wrote. Blokes, they didn't know one another. They just asked me. Never got an answer. So their editor was gutless bastard he were. Couldn't for shame put the report in because Bob used to write it how many times then. And I thought, well, bloody hell. You would have thought that. I think he must have underestimated the opposition to have this match. And but in all fairness to Bob, he used to do a little feature, Bob, in Anglers into News at World at Sunday. And he put it in because we'd fished this match and I'd caught and he hadn't.
But it were Angling Times that were running it and they
didn't fucking put it in.
First ones to drum it up and...
Yeah, but they built it up.
And then nothing.
Nothing. Never reported. And really, Matt, it's not nice, is it?
No, not when you put effort in, gone, sat in front of crowds, fished.
I mean... There's lots of things now, this, that, and I don't say out. And they said, well, I said, I don't blow my own trumpet. I've never done. I mean, okay, somebody don't do so good in matches, and then they do, and they put it on. It's an achievement for them, and I suppose I can understand that. You know, somebody... say, well, I've done this and I want people to know about it. That's fine. I'm not bothered about it, but I've never been like that because I'm not that sort of a chap.
You're not at all, Kevin, but when I can sit down and just have a chat to you about fishing, you only need to listen to some of the places you've been, matches you've won, weights of fish you've caught. And I always say it about good anglers, the fishing does the talking most of the time. And this is a perfect example of that. We've talked about a lot of match wins today, haven't we? Put it that way.
Well, I mean, just 7. I won a Birmingham match at 7, just below Bridgenorth, on Waddler. Probably the first match I ever won on the 7 with a Waddler. 20-odd pound of chub. Billy Lane was second that day with 19 pound of bread.
Billy Lane.
Because he come to me, he said, you've caught on Castor on a Waddler. Billy, I went France actually with Billy.
Yeah?
We went to a match and he was bloody funny.
Were he a good angler, Kevin?
He was in his day, Bill. Yes, Billy.
Mm.
This particular day, we were on this, it were crap, it were, on this little river at Sanlow, it were, and he's fishing, Billy, it's red hot, and he got a bloody hanky. Did you ever see navvies used to put them on hankies with 4 knots in? He had one of them, it's on, and this fella come to him with a beret on, a real swarthy fella with a black tie, and Billy's at it. Me mowing about, how he could, thinking he's a French guy. Well, it's sun too much. So, you know who it were?
Go on.
Bill Bywater from Nottingham. Honestly. Bloody hell, Bill in a bloody beret on, he just looked like a French onion seller. Bloody laugh with a bloody when he spoke, Bill said, it's bloody me. Bloody hell.
Brilliant. obviously we've talked a lot about fishing today, and so much of it's rivers, lakes, all the international side of things. Have you ever been interested in the commercial match fishing scene, Kevin, or have you ever had a dabble at it?
I've had a dabble of it. I'm probably the worst commercial handler there is.
What do you think to it?
Well, I've only been a time or two, and I know I couldn't get in it. And
You had a little spell, didn't you?
is what
You had a little spell, didn't you, on Old Off?
I did. I catched a few, but I could have won one match. A bloody Bible got me fast round the side. But in general, I did start getting better at it there. But then I fished a few matches at Brookside near where I live, and I went worse. You know, normally you go better and better. I went worse.
Do you think, like, obviously if you were in the generation nowadays getting into match fishing, and there's a £50,000 final, there's a couple of £30,000 ones, do you think you'd go down the route of fishing them big matches?
Well, I probably would. I don't think I'd have been successful, Matt.
What makes you say
Well,
that?
the first and foremost, don't forget, I used to work 7 days a week. And a lot of these guys fishing Redler, and I don't think, me and Baz, we talk about it ourselves. We don't think we could have competed. We might have done all right, but I don't think we'd have been as successful. I don't think I would.
Interesting. I'm not so sure personally. I think
Neither am I.
when I listen to you and
Well,
try and read your
maybe,
fishing
He
Right.
brain.
worked it out, wouldn't he?
I don't think so.
Mm.
Whether I would or not, I don't know.
Mm.
I'm not just going to say something as I am and I'm not.
Mm.
But that's my thought of it.
And what about your fishing now, Kevin? Obviously, you've mentioned you're 85 years of age, which you sat in front of me, and I hope if I'm 50% of what you are at 85.
Memory.
Yeah, it's frightening. I've got notes in front of me, and I've got island, this peg, this weight, and I don't even need to look at them because you just reel them off. It's frightening. But what you going to do in your fishing for the foreseeable? What's the future of fishing for you? What do you want to do?
Just do what I'm doing now. When I'm on my peg, I'm sat on my peg, I'm right. I'm not as quick as I were, but I can still catch them. I can still compete. There is things in my favour. I know I'm 85, but I think I'm all right. I'm a bit unsteady on my feet. When I get off my box, half watch what I'm doing. And when I go to these matches, I'm treated like bloody royalty. Everybody says, can I give you a lift and all like that, which they're all good to me. And, well, I'll fish on the Weaver, I'll go. I don't fish at North, which is because there's longer walks. But where I go, they're not far to go. And they're only little matches, but I enjoy it. And I'll go there. And then I'll go on the Mersey. And the Mersey at Warrington is a big river. It's like the Severn. It's like the Middle Severn. And there's fish in it. There's plenty of fish in it. And, you know, I've done well on it this year and really enjoyed it. And I wouldn't say there's that many winning pegs, but there's half at pegs you'll catch, I would think, half of the winner's weight. So at least, you know, there's fish to be caught. And it's interesting. And the last match I fished on it was a pretty tough match. And I had 4.5 pounds. And I won the match and I really enjoyed it. And it were fished at like 11 metres, a 4.5 gram float, so a bit of pace on it. And they wanted it held back, creeping through, overshotted. And it were interesting for me. Really enjoyed it. Won the match, which were double whammy, really.
Well, look, you're 85 and still winning matches, which is mind-blowing, phenomenal, on natural venues that are tough to fish. What would you say to people, you know, like I'm sat here and and people, have you done anything in your life that's enabled you to keep fit and keep fishing and keep competing and winning at the age you're at now?
Well, the actual job I were in were physical. And it weren't as though we were like a bricklayer bent down all the time and that. There were different things, and we were exercising different parts of our body. And, I'm really naturally strong. Like I've had the right stature. But then when I packed in work, then I would fish 14 metres and I started feeling it, where before, never 14 metres, and never thought anything about it. And I could remember one particular match I fished at Gowner in Ireland, cabin, and I were on the Derner first on the swings, and it's not that deep. I fished 15 metres of Tegra, a Shimano Tegra, which is not light, and I were breaking off about 12 metres. It was only shallow. And I weighed in 18 kilo, I had about 200 fish. It was a 6-hour match. And I won the match. And the lad next to me said, "Are you going in pub, Kevin?" I said, "No," I said, "I'm going cabin, actually." He says, "Cabin? What are you going cabin for?" I said, "I'm going to weight training."
Wow.
He says, "What? You fish 6 hours? You've been fishing with that long pole and now you're going to weight train?" And I said, "No, I used to go 3 or 4 times a week."
Even when you're in Ireland?
After matches.
Because that's a knackering day, innit? In water, chucking
pole. As well, didn't you?
But don't forget, it's bloody good exercise, weight training. Not just a matter of dumbbells, them machines. It's good exercise, and I think it keeps you young. But obviously, last 3 years I've not done it.
Yeah, but even last Kevin, you're 85.
We're training at 79. They said, "What? Still 79, still training?" Some of the lads in the gyms. Bloody hell, Kevin.
But that in itself is inspirational, innit? Like,
you know why? You know why I did it?
Go on.
For fishing. That dedicated.
Got to make a difference, innit? Fit, strong, you keep him flexible. Top level sport at the end of the day.
Well, that's I like winning, but I like fishing. I'm a fanatic at it. And I like to say, well, this, that, and said, "Is that all you think about?" And my reaction is there anything else?
It's right, isn't it?
Well, there you are.
I'm glad you say it, because I'm exactly the same, and to hear it from someone like yourself's special. It is. I always ask some quick fire questions. They're just little off the cuff ones to sort of wrap up the show, and people get dead excited about them because I ask similar ones to guess. Now, because you're the first one of 2025, and please don't take this the wrong way, but you're a very, very special guest for us to have on this show. Like I've said a few times, it's an honour to sit in front of Kevin Ashurst and do it. I've added a few extra ones in, and me and Toby are having a little play at the minute to see which ones we're going to keep. So we're using Kevin Ashurst, our greatest guest so far, as a bit of a guinea pig.
No pressure, Kevin.
I'm not asking you, Rod, because you're going to get asked them on your show.
Oh, I'll take his.
No. So I've got a few questions for you. You don't have to tell us a big story about them if you don't want, but just a quick answer. And every guest we have on, I always ask these because you get a bit of a different answer out of different ones. So first one, who do you rate Kevin Ashurst as the best angler that you've ever fished with, dead or alive?
Well, there's a few handlers, but don't forget, different handlers have different strengths. And there were one, obviously, Ivan Marks, and it was sad really what happened to Ivan. I had a lot of respect for Ivan. And Ivan had a good tenure at fishing, and then, I don't know, in his life or whatever, but he stopped competing, Ivan. And there was one particular match which I'd fished on the Avon. After that match I fished at on the Severn, the Intrepid match. And Ivan's, there was a bookie there that day. I had £100 win on myself before at 16s. And I drawed my peg, and Ivan said to me, "You've not drawed well, you know. You've drawn below that bridge."
Mm.
And he says, £7 been the best two weights. Saturday and Sunday, he said, they've been double figures above the bridge. I said, well, I'm here, Ivan. And had a good match, and I was second, £13. Tommy won it on number one. And Ivan said, "Tommy's your danger." And anyway, that were that. But that were a bloody double ball acre that day. And I felt sorry, really. This guy said, I said, "Ivan's done no good," he says. I said, "Well, it's not been..." He said he's only been going through the motions. And I felt sorry for him. Because he had a good tenure, Ivan, and then he did stop competing, you know, which it were upsetting for somebody say something like that to a bloody handler of that calibre. You know, no, I didn't like it.
No, it's not right. It's not right at all.
And I'd had a lot of time for him. He's a likeable lad, Ivan.
Would you put him up there as one of the best that you've ever fished with?
Well, at the time, yes, what he did, the unfortunate thing were when the pole came out, Ivan, like several handlers, you know, they stopped competing. Dave Thomas, for instance. Now, Dave possibly weren't that good of handler to watch, but bloody hell could he catch them on their Avon. We couldn't beat him. When he won that World Championship, there was Clive Smith, Max Winters, who'd done exceptionally well on the Avon. There was John Dean, an excellent handler, John. There were myself. We couldn't beat him. And when the practices were on, he either won or he were in the first three. And I think it were very fitting for Dave to win that match. He were good enough, and he did well to win it. But I know it weren't a good match, as it were the state of the river, but on a normal river. And Dave Thomas, to me, is probably the best handler I know who could keep a shoal of fish feeding.
And how does he do it? What made him so good at that, Kevin?
He just had that natural ability, know how to feed and when to feed and how many to feed. He was very good at it.
Does he still fish, Dave Thomas?
No, I don't think he does.
No. He's still about, though. I'm sure he's still about.
I don't know.
Were you a Leeds lad?
Leeds, and his wife were good, and all Avis.
Really?
Bloody Avis won on the with them.
Right.
Yeah, she did.
Rod's shaking his head at you, remember everyone's name. Sat next to you shaking his head. Well, two great anglers we've mentioned there, Ivan and Dave Thomas.
Well, Dave had a good spell, and then he fell by the whale side. And, well, look at my dad. You know, that, when we were at that forum, Clive Smith and Ken Giles said, Benny is the only old handler what's not an has-been. And, well, in them days, they went to a certain age, and then that were it. But these days, there's good handlers at 70-odd-year-old.
There's even some good ones at 85, isn't there? Eh?
Bloody hell, my dad, I can remember one, we dropped him off at Cooper Bridge, fished the Calder. And I went on, me and this fellow went on to the wharf. I framed, I didn't win it, come back. And they said, well, we dropped him off at the pub, him and Bill Hughes, and they said, oh, we'll get to our pegs. And anyway, he drawed this on Ireland, come back, they're there in the pub. I said, well, Bill says, your dad's won it, guess what weight? Well, £10, £20, 15, £40 he had.
On the Calder.
On the Calder, £40 a roach.
That's an amazing weight for that river. Even now, don't hear of it.
On Trent Championship, when there were 1,000 in it, 68 he won it.
68 years old and he won 1,000 peg.
Won it,
It's an household name in match fishing though. Still now people talk about Benny Ashurst.
Oh, he was better than me.
Do you think he were?
Well, that's
honestly?
what everybody said. Not everybody, but you know the old one said, he's not as good as his dad.
Did you used to draw next to each other much,
Well,
Kevin?
we draw next to one another, and I could remember one match at Dunham,
Mm.
and we drawed high up above the doves.
Mm.
And this fella said, he said, bloody hell, he said, it's racing through up there. So we walked up and it were unboiling. My dad says, well, our only salvation is that tide. So it starts off nothing. Then it started to slow, started to catch, run back, it catched. Then when it started running back, that were it finished. But they were big roach we had. And my dad caught 2 actually. Weighed in 6.14, I had 6.12.
Oh.
But Tony Knight won it, £12. He was just like on the bend on the gravel. But we were second and third.
Brilliant.
My dad was second. But fancy saying, our only salvation's that tide.
But he knew that that's what we're going to
I
happen.
don't know.
He must have
just
done.
bloody said that. I don't think he knew himself really, but he was probably... Because everywhere I draw we're on a winner.
Mm.
That's what he said. I said, well, it's in the bloody bridge. But you'll catch him.
I've got another one for you. What's your most embarrassing match fishing moment?
Sorry?
What's your most embarrassing match fishing moment? Any stick out? Anything you can...
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Never had out where you fell in or out?
Oh, well, I did fall in once.
On the ban one.
On Ban in March. Or on a pallet and it slipped in. Or next to Baz.
He come up in middle, he says, no wonder we're not getting a bite. He says, you can't see out down there.
I got out, bloody hell. Said, well, Baz, I said, Baz, that bastard has shoved me further in.
Didn't you say before? He said, I've never fell in my life. Telling everyone someone had fell in that. He said, I've never fell in my life. Fell in next day.
Though if this fellow walked across, I got out and everybody had seen I were all right. Then they started laughing then when I were out. Steve Meadowcroft, it where he says, hey, he says, there's been a complaint wading. I got left me tattle there, we stopped it with Portadown, went straight to hotel, left me tattle, got in bloody bath. I was bloody blue, it were freezing, it were.
Did you go back and fish or was that
Did I bloody hell? I didn't. Man, they're only about half an hour ago. I didn't know.
I fell in on the ban.
You have?
On New Ferries, how easy me. He made me go back and fish. Give me his thermal suit. He says, go on, get back down there. In this same place, Ballyscullion Lodge.
Never.
And I tell you what, I was cold. I sat in front of the fire all night and I could not warm up, Matt. I was frozen to the bone.
Proper got you. Dangerous, isn't it?
Makes me go back though and say, go on, you'll be all right.
I know,
You're all right, go on.
They're only
What was it? You had to break the ice in the edge, didn't you? And this is on the back, you needed 4 ounces old. And they sent me back. I was only a youth.
Yeah, Roger, you can get back to fishing.
But he was only young when he shouldn't be okay.
If I had to ask you, Kevin, this is a good one. What would you say is your single biggest match-winning edge?
I think if it were a change needed, I'd done it when everybody were thinking about it.
What a great answer.
That were one thing I've done. I could, weigh up pretty quick what were wrong. Not all the time, but sometimes. And that were obviously an asset if you're on the method quicker. If it's pretty even fishing.
Great answer. I think you see that in the best anglers now. First ones to change, first ones to make the move.
They know, don't they?
Great answer. Great answer. Bit of a controversial one on the next one. What would you say is the worst thing about match fishing, and how would you fix it if you got a chance to fix it?
I think the worst thing in match fishing is entrance fees. High entrance fees, because everybody's, things are tight these days. There's a lot of anglers, family men, and obviously family should come first. So there's got to be sacrifices, haven't there? And I think big money entrances it's not acceptable. I don't think so. But then this is how fishing's gone. Fishing's always been a cloth cap image, really. It's always been a poor man's sport. And now when this is on, I think it prizes a lot. The cost stops a lot of anglers fishing and entering these matches. Because if things are not right at all, things are not right, full stop.
Great answer.
And it's nice to have, a partner who can accept it. But also, you've got to be fair to the partner, because there's two people in a relationship. And if it's a family, yes, I think, you have to have priorities. And it's great for, your partner to understand that and accept it, but then it works both roads. You have to make efforts in other ways. Like
it a lot. Nice, affordable. Let everyone able to do it. Goes a long way in fishing, that, especially when we're talking about less people doing it now than ever. Great answer. I'm sure a lot of people will listen to that one, Kevin. And a final one. This will be interesting. If fishing didn't exist, what sport or hobby would you ended up doing?
Darts.
Yeah?
I was always a fair dart player.
Solid, quick answer, that.
Never good enough.
Right.
But I could remember one particular, they run an event in Ireland, Classic Week. There was 250 quid first prize.
For darts?
Yes. And I played a good darts player in the semi-final. And I got up in 15 darts and beat him. And he was a good player. So then I'm in the final. And I played Arthur Dawkes. He was a maggot farmer from Cambridgeshire. And who should be marking? Only Ivan. So they always played round the board, didn't play scoring. And I scored well, and then I'm throwing it a number, and whatever happened, and I'm thinking, what do I want? A double to get up. Ivan says, double 10. No talking. Double 10. Lad. So I throw for double 10. Last dart, got it. 15 darts again.
No.
Won it. 250 quid on a trophy. Classic week. They said, do you play golf? Well, I said, oh, I'm here. My handicap's on 6. Never held a golf club in my life. Said, yeah, your handicap's 6. Never held a, no.
Well, we'll have to have a quick throw at darts when we've done this podcast.
Yeah.
There's a board over there, isn't
It
there?
used to be at Manor, didn't it?
It was a manor.
I went in it one year, yeah. I remember.
Ivan were marking.
Get it sorted this year, Rod.
I know.
We'll have one this year.
Yeah,
Let's get it back going.
You've got to do your course
Never
first,
good
eh?
enough, though, Matt. Never good enough.
Don't matter. You're good enough at one other thing, and that's fishing, Kevin. I don't know if Rod mentioned it to you, but on this podcast, we always ask the guest if they can bring a gift in to leave for us.
Sorry?
We always ask the guest if they can bring something in that they can leave with us. We've got a nice glass cabinet in the podcast room at office, just as a little momentum. Is there anything you've got that we can take away to say that you've been on this show?
Well, I don't know.
What we got, Rod?
Well, he's brought these here.
There's a table full of stuff. We can't take all that.
No, we can't have that.
All right, I'm only bringing them over to show, aren't I? You've got that. That.
Look at that.
I thought you could show that.
Well, I can get a picture of that, can't I? Look
Well,
at that.
hopefully.
This you and Benny, Kevin.
Yeah, my dad, that's Dick
that.
Clegg's coat, that. His England coat.
What that Benny's got on.
Yeah.
That's a great photo, that. Look at that.
I don't think Dick ever got credit, for it. He did a lot of work in... I used to say you're on fucking holiday again, you Dick. You come out of me. He said, well, I'm bloody running about here and there. I said, you're on bloody holiday.
What were it like fishing under Dick? Were he a good manager, Kevin?
I think he was, I think he was.
Be nice to get him on a podcast. Dick Clegg.
Yeah,
Would be nice to get him on. It definitely would. So are you saying we've not got a gift? We've not got out we can take with us, have we?
Well, give him that book.
How's about do you a deal? We
Well,
get a nice photo of us four in this club. I'll get 2 printed out because I'd love one for my cabinet myself at home, and we can get you to sign them at one point. You reckon that'd be possible?
anything. I don't know what I could have bloody... could have fetched.
Matt, I swear, I did tell him.
I love the
And
fact he's not bothered. I love
We had
it.
a load of conversations over this very thing.
Listen, if there's one person who can come on and not leave a gift, it's Kevin Ashurst, isn't it?
A centre pin reel, old cocks. I got off one on Bill Hughes. It's worth about $3,000, I think.
You can't get that way.
Where's that then?
Daniel has it. I said it'll... they give me an old cock's reel.
Never.
Bone handle. When I was 20, Bill Hughes.
And you still got it now?
Yes.
Still, do you use it or
No.
no?
Fucking Bill Hughes. He wasn't National Bill. Fucking fancy having a fight over a fucking...
You've done
catfish
so well with
matches.
this language, till this second. So you're getting bored?
Well,
brilliant,
I'll tell you what I like. Young anglers doing well. A lot of young anglers. And I think like he's a young angler. And one particular angler, he's not bloody pension now, Fraser.
Rod Fraser, yeah.
And the fucking hell he gives me some stick.
Does he really?
Oh.
Good angler he is, isn't he?
Oh.
I don't know him, do I?
Well, first
fishes like him, caster.
first,
Right.
Caster
first
fishing.
time I saw Rod, he was 16 at Trafford Park. And he had £6 and he weren't on a good peg. And I said to my dad, I said, that bloody lad's done well. They're only a kid, 16 he were. Well, he told
Fished
me he
in
was
same
16.
team and that, haven't we? And stuff.
And since then, you know, I've always liked him. I've always had a lot of time for younger handlers. And even now, although I don't see as many,
Mm.
you know, some young handlers in Northwich. And like he think, but he is he 67 now, Rod?
Oh yeah, tell you what, he'll be yeah.
And
I bet you he is, you know.
And
Not far off.
he says to me this day, he says, bloody hell, Kevin, he says, how were you a couple of weeks since? He said, everybody to me right beat me. Well, starts fishing. He weren't so good, and then all at once I started to catch. Weighed in £11, and we're all at top at Lock, Hunt's Lock. And he's up there, Rod, he'd 10 Rod.
Mm.
So they walks there with scales. He says, what have he said, Rod's winning it 10. What have you? I said, well, I should have double figures. Weighed in £11 on. I says to him, I said, how long have you been fishing this river? Because he's always on it, Rod.
Mm.
And he's done exceptionally well on it. He didn't say out. I said, you said it's no good here. I said, and here I am. I said, you know, Rod, you know, fuck all.
Brilliant.
Young handlers, yeah, like.
It's important. We need more of it. We definitely do. I love how you're calling someone who's 67 a young angler.
Oh,
That
yeah.
sums fishing up,
Oh,
doesn't it?
it's a worry, isn't it?
That sums fishing up. Well, listen, we've got to be out of here about 10 minutes ago. So all I've got to say, especially to you, Kevin, honestly, to sit here and have a chat with you like this, it's been an honour. Dream come true for me. I hope that people enjoy it as much as I've sat here. We could go on forever. We could talk about so many more things, and I hope I can have another conversation with you like this at some point. But thank you very much for sharing everything that you have today, honestly. I've got to shake your hand.
You're welcome.
Honestly, I massively respect it and
Well-
appreciate it. And also, Rod, for setting it up and sorting it out. I know
Anytime, Matt.
yourself, Gary Worley, also
Yeah.
helped us with it. But
Well, Gary pushed for it more than anyone,
Yeah.
like so. But you made it happen, mate.
Yeah.
So thank you.
you've got some special stories.
Yeah.
I hope we've done them justice.
Yeah.
You're coming on another show.
Brilliant.
Maybe even get Gary on one as well.
Right, me and him.
There we
That'll
go.
do.
So what can I give you?
Go on. What you got?
I don't know. What can I give you?
You've not
What-
gone out.
I
That's
told you,
it.
bring
We're done.
something, didn't I?